astronomers find huge, previously unknown cluster of stars. The Milky Way is a hot topic for conversation in the world of recent discoveries. Not only has it been bested by an orphan cloud, but astronomers have now uncovered a huge cluster of stars at the center of our galaxy. Labeled an ancient stellar population, astronomers believe the cluster was once a globular cluster in our galaxy which over time migrated towards the center of the Milky Way where it was then discovered. The center of the Milky Way is in fact quite densely populated with stars, with a higher concentration of them than most other parts of the universe, making the location of the find perhaps not all that surprising. More specifically, it contains 20 million stars spread across a distance of 26 light-years. Interestingly though, the very center of the Milky Way was only discovered last century. And so while it's relatively close to home, a mere 25,000 light-years away from Earth, we are still in the process of uncovering huge amounts of information about this region. Not only is it a relatively recent discovery in itself, let alone this new cluster of stars, but a lot of research had since been focused on the massive black hole which also lies at the center of the Milky Way. Back to our newly found giant cluster of stars. It is thought that the cluster is only about 7,000 light-years away from Earth and is also roughly 75 million years old, so middle-aged when it comes to stars. Although only discovered in 2020, the brightness of the stars within this cluster, called Valparaiso 1, is so intense that you can observe them with a telescope from Earth in your back garden, for example, somewhere near to the Sagittarius constellation. This makes the lateness of the discovery even stranger, as it is a well-observed and well-charted part of the night sky. Astronomers have since explained that owing to the distances of stars in the Milky Way and neighboring galactic orbits, it can sometimes be more difficult than one may think to observe clusters at the center of the Milky Way. Still, Valparaiso 1 is estimated to contain approximately 10,000 solar masses within its cluster, meaning it is not all that small, and so astronomers do admit that it going under the radar for so long is puzzling. With clusters of 10,000 stars being discovered so close to home, at the very heart of the Milky Way, a well-researched area, who knows what else is out there both near and far from us waiting to be discovered. Dozens of starless rogue alien planets possibly spotted. Throughout the years, scientists have discovered more and more exciting details about space and how our universe operates, often contradicting previously held theories and facts. As it turns out, planets do not need to be tethered to and orbit a star. Astronomers have discovered various free-floating planets which travel through space on their own, untethered. Researchers have been collecting data from NASA's Kepler Space Telescope for years, poring over the data to identify possible rogue exoplanets and find evidence of other Earth-like planets. This existence of untethered planets was found in Kepler's database from a 2-month observation in 2016 during its K2 mission phase. During this time, Kepler had observed millions of stars in the center of our galaxy every half hour. The researchers were eager to study the data and hopefully find evidence of gravitational microlensing events. These occur when a massive object's gravity bends the light of a distant star, acting like a magnifying lens through which we can observe things usually too far away to see. For 2 months, Kepler spotted 27 short-duration signals, some of which lasted upwards of 10 days long. 4 of the shortest signals were consistent with planets that were about the same mass as our Earth. With this data, scientists were able to reason the existence of free-floating exoplanets. If there were a host star and a planet in orbit, they would have found a more extended signal. The leading theory is that these planets were initially formed and orbited around a host star but were pulled away by a stronger gravitational force. It was not easy for scientists to uncover this evidence, as they had to navigate through vast amounts of data and crowds of stars. Kepler was designed to find planets using the transit method, where stars dim when a planet crosses in front of it, not this microlensing method of observing dense star fields. The data the telescope collected was blurry, hectic, and crowded, making it extremely difficult for the researchers to pinpoint the minimal changes in brightness that last only briefly. The telescope itself was a decade old and did not provide the same quality picture as newer telescopes. One researcher compared the work to trying to find a firefly in the middle of a busy highway only using your cell phone camera. It should be noted that while these findings are intriguing and exciting, they do not prove the existence of the 3 floating planets. Researchers had to develop new techniques and strategies to analyze Kepler's data and find the possibility of rogue planets, but their work remains unfinished. Since the Kepler telescope was decommissioned in 2018, researchers are turning their sights to others that have the capability of spotting microlensing events. NASA's Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope and the European Space Agency's Euclid mission both have the potential to provide the data that confirms the existence of these rogue planets. It will take further observations and studies until they can conclude their theories, possibly extending for several more years. Amateur astronomer discovers a tiny moon around Jupiter. We often hear the advice given to us growing up to making money doing something you love, or sometimes to try and keep work and hobbies distinct from one another. Whichever side of this debate you fall on, amateur astronomer Kylie has proved that you do not need to be a professional to make great progress and significant achievements in a field. In 2020, Chile successfully located 4 Jupiter moons that had been considered lost after their predicted patterns of movement seemingly changed. Lee replotted their predicted trajectories and accurately highlighted which moons these were from telescope images that were publicly available. Following this feat, Lee has managed to discover and locate a previously unknown moon orbiting Jupiter. Kylie posted on June 30th in an online community for the world's leading amateur astronomers, the Minor Planet mailing list, commenting, "I'm proud to say that this is the first planetary moon discovered by an amateur astronomer." Using old telescope images from 2003, Lee spotted the small moon orbiting Jupiter 385 million miles away from Earth. Jupiter has a total of 79 moons. And now thanks to Lee, that's 80. And this unnamed satellite could be one of just many more moons we are yet to discover within our very own solar system. Some of these Jovian moons are so small that they can be seen by a large telescope for only 1 month in a year. Jeff Hecht from Sky and Telescope reports that Lee made the discovery using images taken back in 2003 by the Canada-France-Hawaii telescope. This is the same data set from which they were able to pinpoint the lost Jovian moons in 2020. Both the new moon and the lost moons were discovered within the Karma cluster, a group of 22 rocks with orbits fairly similar to one another in space. Many NASA scientists have predicted that CAME, the largest of these satellites, was once an asteroid that has broken into smaller pieces, giving each part a similar orbit with an average radius of 14 miles. After Lee had made the initial observation, they calculated the 22 days arc the moon follows by using data available from the Subaru telescope, which confirmed that the previously unseen object was indeed a moon orbiting Jupiter. Lee has elaborated on their work, explaining that they made 76 observations which covered a total of 15.26 years, meaning the orbit is mapped out and secured for decades. They stated, 0061 equals S/2003J24. Other amateur astronomers have congratulated Kylie, explaining to those who were uninformed about the hours of work required to search through the incredible amounts of data. Lee has described their search for Jupiter's moons as a summer hobby before a return to school. This is an impressive feat and an incredible discovery made without advanced equipment, but rather the data that is available to the public. New methods for predicting solar storms. An element of weather that you might not even be aware of actually affects life on Earth much more than people realize. Solar flares are high-energy radiation that erupts from the sun's surface, resulting in space weather that affects satellites orbiting Earth and can even short out electrical power grids. One of the largest solar flares occurred in 1859, decades before there were satellite, but another similarly large explosion could be catastrophic for us now in the 21st century. Needless to say, predicting when these flares might occur is vital in order to prevent or minimize these damages. But how would one go about predicting when a gigantic mass of flaming gas is going to erupt into another solar flare? Luckily, scientists have recently developed a new method for predicting these storms, and it seems to be much more accurate than previous methods. After much work with theoretical mathematical models attempting to understand why solar flares happen and exactly what happens as they burst, scientists were finally able to come up with a physical model using NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory, or the SDO. With the data gathered from the SDO, they were able to create a three-dimensional map of the sun and its relevant magnetic charges. Although the true causes of solar flares are still a mystery, the flares themselves are an explosion of magnetic energy. So scientists figured that mapping the magnetic zones of the sun would be the first step in predicting when and where the flares would occur. Since magnetic fields cannot be viewed directly, scientists working on the project developed software that can calculate the fields in 3 dimensions and create a map of the zones. They then look for locations where the magnetic fields reconnect and create instability, which could indicate the start of a flare. Kanya Kasano, one of the lead scientists on the project, spoke to EarthSky about their model, comparing it to detecting where an avalanche will occur by looking at the amount of snow on a mountain and guessing how large of a collapse will result from a crack at any location. As it currently stands, the program takes several hours to make a single prediction, but has still managed to predict 7 of the 9 most recent solar flares, which were all X-class flares. Additionally, despite only being in the conceptual stages, it correctly estimated the exact location and power of each flare. Although the researchers are hoping to be able to streamline the process in order to quickly provide more accurate predictions, right now the current method is breaking ground as the first reliable method of predicting these huge, potentially damaging solar flares. Back in 2006, researchers working on the detection of deep space radiation discovered anomalous radio signals coming from within our galaxy that appear to be of intelligent communication. It is theorized that the radio signals are believed to be emanating from intelligent extraterrestrial civilizations from distant planets or satellites within our Milky Way galaxy. Support for this claim comes from statistical research models of the current predicting expected radio signals and radiation to be less than 1/6 the current measured output of the anomalous radio waves, with researchers giving the extraordinarily loud signal the name space roar, given its impossible to explain qualities. The difference between the statistical predictions and the observed predictions far exceeds 5 sigma of chance distribution and are considered anomalous to the degree of either scientifically disproving the current cosmological principle theory or is evidence of an artificial source generating massive outputs of radio waves emanating from a time during the primordial universe. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, in an effort to better understand the phenomenon known as the space roar, we will be going over the theories and evidence surrounding the anomalous discovery and what the research tells us about the origins of the impossible-to-explain radio waves. Thank you for watching. NASA would launch a balloon-based satellite into the upper atmosphere referred to as the Absolute Radiometer for Cosmology, Astrophysics, and Diffuse Emission, also referred to as the Arcade Machine by NASA scientists in charge of the mission. According to NASA researchers, the goal of the mission was to send the Arcade Machine into the upper atmosphere to gather a series of readings surrounding the background radiation of the universe to use as supporting evidence for the Lambda model of the Big Bang creation period. Equipped with 7 radiometers called to nearly absolute zero, the Arcade instrument was considered at the time to be the most accurate detector of radiation at wavelengths only centimeters in size. After working on the balloon satellite for several years, it would be in July of 2006 that the Arcade Machine would be launched from the Columbia Scientific Balloon Facility based out of Texas within the small city of Palestine, to begin its primary mission of radiation detection. The balloon would reach a height of 120,000 feet, where it would maintain this height for several days as it would scan roughly 7% of the night sky during its observations. It is at around 120,000 feet that the atmosphere begins to thin sufficiently enough that the vacuum of space becomes apparent and allows for the collection of accurate raw data. While at this height, the Arcade balloon satellite would begin to collect a vast amount of anomalous data that perplexed researchers. According to the lead researcher of the mission, Alan Kogut of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, the incoming data of the Arcade balloon satellite recorded ancient primordial radio waves 6 times larger than the expected amount of radio waves that were projected by the mathematical models of the early universe. As it had been theorized by the Lambda CDM model, residual radio waves making up the cosmic radio background were believed to be 6 times smaller than what the Arcade satellite had recorded, as the only source of radio waves would have been naturally formed via redshifting primordial stars, primordial galaxies, and possible gas clusters manipulating electromagnetic waves. Alan Kogut would later provide an interview explaining that the detected radio waves far exceeded any expected possible output. And even after several months of detailed analysis, the researchers working on the project were unable to find any explanatory source for the residual radio waves, almost an order of magnitude of greater than theorized expectations. Researchers would go so far as to rule out known radio sources such as pulsars and their fast radio bursts, as well as a large gas cluster located within the outermost halo of our galaxy, possibly causing a form of electromagnetic manipulation or gravitational lensing. Despite their best efforts, Alan Kogut and his team were unable to find any reasonable explanation for the radio waves, which were deemed to be extremely anomalous and impossible to explain with known astrophysical and cosmological theory. Another member of the Arcade research team, an American physicist by the name of Dale Fixon from the University of Maryland at College Park, problem of the radio waves far exceeds any expected norms or possible natural source. He would later provide a statement claiming that if every model was to be taken into consideration for all possible natural sources of radio waves in the early universe, there would still not be enough radio galaxies in the universe to explain the level of residual radio waves being detected, and that some force other than radio galaxies must be responsible for the detection. Here is a direct quote taken from the NASA articles surrounding the incident. "The universe really threw us a curve," Kogut says. "Instead of the faint signal we hoped to find, here was this booming noise 6 times louder than anyone had predicted." Detailed analysis ruled out an origin from primordial stars or from known radio sources, including gas in the outermost halo of our own galaxy. The source of this cosmic radio background remains a mystery. Many objects in the universe emit radio waves. In 1931, American physicist Carl Jansky first detected radio static from our own Milky Way galaxy. Similar emission from other galaxies creates a background hiss of radio noise. The problem, notes team member Dale Fixon of the University of Maryland at College Park, is that there doesn't appear to be enough radio galaxies to account for the signal Arcade detected. "You'd have to pack them into the universe like sardines," he says. "There wouldn't be any space left between one galaxy and the next." In 2011, researchers working on the Arcade 2 mission, which was tasked with reanalyzing the data gathered from the original 2006 Arcade flight, would come to the conclusion that the source of the radio waves had to have been coming from a yet unknown or underestimated galactic source, either originating from ancient galaxies near the dawn of the universe, or from ancient residual radio waves from within our own galaxy. A published research paper led by Alan Kogut and his team would claim to have isolated a detection that was believed to have matched the projected expected radio waves generated from the early universe and the cosmic microwave background, and yet were still unable to explain the additional large amounts of residual radio waves. We have presented evidence for isotropic radio emission detected by Arcade 2. Beyond what can be explained by our model of galactic emission and the unresolved emission from the known population of discrete sources. After doing several statistical sets and projecting a possible modeling error of about 10% to 50%, the detected radio waves from the 2006 Arcade 1 mission were impossible to discount, via exceeding expectations by significant margins according to their statistical models. Would end their research paper by offering 2 possible sources for the radio waves. We conclude that the residual signature is due either to a diffuse extragalactic background of emission from discrete radio sources with properties somewhat different than the faint end of the distribution of known natural sources, or to unmodeled residual emission from our own galaxy. Although we believe the former to be more likely, we cannot exclude the latter explanation. In this explanation, the amount of radio waves and the frequency they operated on appeared to be at the smallest expected end of the frequency that radio waves were expected to be distributed on by any known natural sources, appearing to have originated from unnatural or perhaps intelligent sources. Although not accepted by the scientific community and widely dismissed without substantial supporting evidence, a small minority of academia and Arcade researchers posited the theory that though the cosmological principle theory is accurate, the radio signals are indeed anomalous and could only be explained by the possibility of intelligent extraterrestrial civilizations emanating large amounts of radio waves in all directions from within our own Milky Way galaxy, or during the time of the ancient primordial universe. Even more peculiar and supporting of the extraterrestrial theory is that the discovered radio waves faint end of the expected distribution of natural radio waves right around the 2G to 3G radio wave frequency. Not only are these specific radio frequencies completely anomalous, as no natural mechanisms are known to produce such specific frequencies, but the fact that the radio frequencies seem to directly match the modern-day radio frequencies commonly used for television, radio, and internet communication seems to imply a rather artificial nature to the discovered radio waves. This could imply that the discovered radio waves are remnants of ancient extragalactic civilizations that rose and fell during the time of the primordial universe, and their radio waves have only recently reached our planet. Even less likely, however, the radio waves could be evidence of ancient extraterrestrial civilizations from within our own galaxy bouncing around due to gas clouds and nebulae trapping a repeating signal within the Milky Way, implying an ancient civilization several that was capable of producing our modern 3G signals more than 10 billion years in the past. Even more interesting, almost a year prior to the discovery of the radio waves on the 5th of July back in 2005, science fiction author Charles Stross would publish his science fiction novel Achille Rondo, positing a theory referred to as the theory of Achille Rondo on the development of advanced civilizations. According to Charles Stross, he would argue that as civilizations advance, their computational power will naturally follow Moore's law, causing computers to double in their computational power every 2 years. If one follows the trajectory of Moore's law, it is inevitable that the mind of the species responsible for the computational devices will eventually be outpaced by their own technology's computational power. In this regard, for the species to continue their line of efficiency and maintain Moore's law, they would be required to artificially enhance their own intelligence in a way that directly matches with their expected computational growth. Although it is theoretically possible for a species to genetically enhance their intelligence through gene editing, Charles Stross argues the inevitable conclusion of a species slowly forming symbiotic connections with technology in ever-increasing dependencies. In this sense, the theory of Achille Rondo postulates that the inevitable technological is in the total conversion of consciousness into computational function. By converting their consciousness into an artificial intelligence hosted on computational devices, any species would be able to both match their computational power while increasing their own intellectual evolution. At the rate of humanity's technological progress, Charles Stross believed that in the next few decades humans would begin to offload memories onto cloud-based servers and eventually into a physics-based computational engine to copy their minds down into computational devices. If Charles Stross's theory of Achille Rondo is accurate, it could be that ancient extraterrestrial civilizations have also accomplished such a feat countless millennia in the past, and their entire consciousness is being transmitted and shared across a galactic scale, being sent throughout solar systems at the speed of light to technological computational-based societies. Stross argues that computational societies would no longer need physical matter such as planets, food, and water to survive, but would only need the conversion of pure energy and the construction of computational devices existing entirely in a cyberspace around harvested stars. Such evidence of massive artificial constructions orbiting stars for harvesting energy has been detected and argued after the discovery of Tabby's star, an anomalous star believed to have an anomalous orbiting body, atypical of naturally formed celestial bodies. In this regard, the discovery of the radio waves 6 times larger than the expected output modeled by the current Lambda CDM model could be evidence of an ancient galactic internet connection stretching across the stars, connected by radio signals sharing data and pure alien consciousness traveling through the galaxy at the speed of light. Given the fact that NASA appears to be interested in isolating the space-real signal to an incredibly accurate degree, having the Arcade 2 team model any expected natural radio waves and removing them from the data to get a pure space-real signal, it could mean that the National Aeronautics and Space Administration already believes the signal to have an intelligent origin that could potentially be deciphered. Charles Stross would argue towards the end of his novel that ancient galactic civilizations did follow the theory of Achille Rondo would openly transmit instructions to emerging civilizations on how to connect to the galactic signal to allow connections to different planets across the stars. This could mean that such a signal is already being studied and deciphered by NASA in the modern day. Oddly enough, despite making superficial media headlines, conspiracy theorists believe that NASA has made several attempts to cover up the space roar anomaly. By dismissing the radio wave data as a possible modeling error while artificially inflating their expected natural distribution of statistics to make the recovered data seem far less anomalous than it truly is. According to the Arcade 2, the mission led back in 2011 with the primary purpose of analyzing the data recovered from the 2006 Arcade flight. The researchers were tasked with making several different models of slight variations and assuming a 50% modeling error with any data within 2 sigmas of significance to be dismissed. Despite this extremely wide margin of error, researchers were still unable to dismiss the anomalous radio waves that far exceeded the distribution significance. In no other cosmological model would a 50% modeling error with data independently confirmed from two separate sources be considered a reasonable practice, lending credence to the possible cover-up theory. Surrounding the 2006 Arcade findings would not be made public for several years following the mission, when the Arcade 2 mission paper was finally published back in 2011. The Skull asteroid TB-145 in 2015, on Halloween no less, an ominous space rock flew past our planet. The hunk of mass was thought to be a lifeless comet which had lost all of its vaporous properties such as water due to countless orbits around the Sun. Astronomers were taken aback by the appearance of the asteroid as it looked hauntingly similar to a cosmically sized human skull. The 2015 flyby cut it pretty close by space standards. It passed with only 1.27 lunar distances between. The comet passed again in 2018 but kept more of a distance. Because the comet is extinct, it has no tail. It is relatively small, all things considered, clocking in at approximately 2,047 feet or 625 meters. Vishnu Reddy, a scientist at the Planetary Science Institute in Tucson, Arizona, and this to say about it according to NASA's JPL site. We found that the object reflects about 6% of the light it receives from the Sun. That is similar to fresh asphalt, and while here on Earth we think that is pretty dark, it is brighter than a typical comet which reflects only 3 to 5% of the light. That suggests it could be cometary in origin, but as there is no comet evident, the conclusion is it is a lifeless comet. It is indeed Mr. Eddy. While it is projected to pass Venus and Mercury several times in the next few years, it is not scheduled to pass by Earth again until 2082. It should be noted that the eerie appearance of the beaming skull is only visible from certain angles, so for anyone thinking that this could be a threat or perhaps a greeting from intelligent life, it's more likely that it is our own narcissistic biases getting the better of us. Scientists find strange blobs on Uranus. As with many planets and processes in space, Uranus has an unexplained phenomenon that has been confusing scientists. The planet's atmosphere is abundant in gases, including, for example, methane, but no ammonia has been observed. The same is true of Neptune. Now, however, scientists think they may have cracked the code. On the surface of Uranus and Neptune, a number of strange blobs described as mushy have been observed. The blobs, which are being referred to as mush balls, appear to contain large volumes of gas. These mush balls are slushy and, according to a press release on the research, are made with ammonia and water. The so-called mush balls can also be referred to as hail balls, as they have been likened in physical appearance to a large muddy hailstone. Some have theorized that the peculiar mush balls could be why astronomers cannot detect ammonia in the atmosphere. If the ammonia is restricted to solely the mush balls, then the gas could be present without being detected. Jupiter is another planet that seems to house some mush balls. Here, however, scientists have observed a different trend. On Jupiter, the mush balls transport the ammonia into the atmosphere, where clouds form, preventing detection of the gas. The catch here is that ammonia is then detected much deeper into the atmosphere than when we expect could naturally occur. Tristan Gullo, a planetary scientist whose team presented their mushball study at the Euro Planet Science Congress 2021, explained that we have gained this information thanks to the Juno spacecraft. He stated, "Mushballs. Scientists hope that by studying other planets such as Jupiter, we will be able to gain more answers regarding Uranus and Neptune, though we still do not know much about Neptune and Uranus compared to other planets in our solar system." Neither planet has been explored or visited since 1989, when NASA's Voyager 2 mission flew past the two mysterious planets. We can continue to develop our technology on the ground and conduct research from here on Earth. Though the results are not quite the same as the high-tech outer space technology we are seeing in spacecrafts like Juno exploring Jupiter. Hopefully over the coming decades we will be able to unravel precisely what is happening on Uranus and Neptune, though for now we will be taking educated guesses as to what the mushballs are specifically doing. As we develop our technology and conduct new and wider observations, we grow closer to exploring space and the future. Uncovering markings and evidence of just how we lost ancient cities reminds us that there is still so much to learn from our past. New galaxy protocluster discovered in early universe. Speaking of galactic clusters, scientists have uncovered a brand new protocluster which has been dubbed PHC G237014250 or simply G237. G237 possesses 63 galaxies, some of which are blue star-forming and contain cosmic nuclei, but unfortunately this galaxy is an entire 10.6 billion light-years away, extremely far from us. Dr. Brenda Fry from the University of Arizona stated, "This discovery is an important step toward reaching our ultimate goal, understanding the assembly of galaxy clusters, the most massive structures that exist in the universe." The protocluster was originally spotted using the ESA's Planck telescope during an ordinary on the electromagnetic spectrum, showing itself for the very first time. As soon as they could, astronomers got to researching the Sydney from further with other telescopes. Dr. Fry and her team of astronomers utilized the Subaru telescope in Japan alongside the binocular telescope in Arizona to help with their research. Dr. Fry stated, "You can think of galaxy protoclusters such as G237 as a galaxy shipyard in which massive galaxies are being assembled. Only this structure existed at a time when the galaxy was 3 billion years old. At the same time, the genealogy may be closer than you think because the universe is homogeneous and the same in all directions. We think that the Milky Way may have docked at a protocluster node similar to G237 when it was very young." The team's initial observations suggested that the rate of forming stars in the cluster was insanely high and impossibly so. The data they gathered greatly confused the researchers who struggled to make sense of how that could be. The data showed that the G237 cluster was creating stars more than 10,000 times at the rate of our own Milky Way. The reason why this felt impossible to the astronomers is simple. At such speeds, the protocluster would have surely used up its entire supply of stellar fuel and should have settled just as the Virgo supercluster had done. Dr. Fry explained the protocluster as each of the 63 galaxies discovered so far in G237 was like a star factory in overdrive. It's as if the galaxies were working overtime to assemble stars. The rate of production was unsustainable. At such a pace, the supply chains are expected to break in the near future and in a way that permanently shuts down the galaxy shipyard. Hydrogen gas is required for stars to upkeep the production, meaning there had to be a continuous source for this to occur. Dr. Fry claims it would require an efficient and unbroken supply chain that drew in unreasonably large amounts of fresh gas to fuel the star-forming factories. We don't know where that gas was coming from. However, they managed to unravel that the galaxy was partially corrupted. The observations took into consideration galaxies outside of the protocluster. Once this was corrected, the findings were far more realistic, yet still respectively high. To 1,000 solar masses a year compared with our galaxy's 1 solar mass per year. Dr. Fry compares the correction to the shipyard allegory, stating it now seems that they found a successful galaxy shipyard that is working at a high efficiency to assemble galaxies and the stars within them. Now that the hydrogen amount has been confirmed as sustainable for such a large production of stars and galaxies. Liquid-filled canyons on Titan. Another recent space discovery is how a team of researchers found that Saturn's largest moon, Titan, is full of deep, Lexus canyons that make this large moon look almost like Earth. Titan is a cold and icy planet with rivers of methane, a far cry from our warm Earth that is filled with rivers of water. The research team has found that these canyons and channels on Titan form a network of rivers that they have named Vidflumina. These canyons are roughly half a mile wide and between 800 and 2,000 feet deep. Similar to how the Amazon River flows into the Atlantic, these rivers on Titan flow into its largest sea, Legia Mare. While researchers know that these rivers are filled with liquid methane hydrocarbons, more research is needed to fully understand how the rivers flow. These observations would not have been possible without the data collected in 2013 by NASA's Cassini spacecraft that studied the topography of Titan. Yet, despite all of the information scientists have been able to uncover, most of the secrets of these canyons remain a mystery. Another mystery about these canyons is just how they were created. Canyons form on Earth due to erosion. This may not be the case on Titan. It is also possible that geological activities facilitated the creation of the canyons, but again scientists cannot be certain. According to Valeria Poggiali, the lead author of the research paper that describes Cassini's finding on Titan, it's likely that a combination of these forces contributed to the formation of the deep canyons. But at present it's not clear to what degree each was involved. What is clear is that any description of Titan's geological evolution needs to be able to explain how the canyons got there. Although scientists can theorize about the origins of Titan, there is still a lot to uncover. Adding more to the mysteries about this moon, scientists suspect Titan to be a potential area for alien life. They suspect this so much that there are plans for NASA to send an autonomous submarine to explore more of Titan. Despite the new data uncovered by the Titan, its canyons, and what they mean for humans on Earth as well as the universe itself. Out there beyond our skies and even sometimes in our backyards, there are constant discoveries that uncover mysteries that were previously incomprehensible to us. A mysterious wobble is moving Mars poles around. A good few of us have a strange neighbor we keep an eye out for. Planet Earth has a rather quirky neighbor too. Mars, the red planet one door down from us, has been wobbling as it spins, unusual behavior to say the least, according to research published in 2020 in the journal Geophysical Research Papers. Though the reason why has left scientists baffled. As Mars has been waving around and dancing off its course, the poles of the planet have been moving off from the axis of rotation. The study quoted that the poles moved about 4 inches away from the axis of rotation over a 200-day period. This odd waving around does have a name, the Chandler wobble. Strangely enough, astronomers have seen this phenomenon before here on Earth. While we did not know that the straying away from the central point is possible, we were yet to observe it elsewhere, and we are still no closer to finding a definitive answer as to why this peculiar activity takes place. The Chandler wobble was named after Seth Carlo Chandler, the man who was responsible for uncovering this unusual event more than 100 years ago. Science writer Jack Lee wrote at EOS that the wobbling takes place when planets are not perfectly spherical. It is also worth noting that the wobble of Earth is a much more significant size than Mars. With our wobble straying 30 feet from the axis of rotation with the wobble pattern looping every 433 days. It's not too big of a deal for us humans when Earth has a wobbly rotation. This has a small insignificant impact upon planet Earth but does not appear to be damaging or harmful in the slightest. But we still know very little about it. Scientific calculations seem to indicate that the wobble will naturally fade away eventually. The 2021 study has suggested that the Chandler wobble on Earth is being prolonged and continuing with such momentum because of changes in the pressure of the atmosphere and in our oceans. A similar pattern of logic has then been applied to Mars. Thanks to data collected by the Mars Odyssey, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and the Mars Global Surveyor, we have 18 years of information and monitoring of Mars available. The team has also suggested that a natural correction of the planet's poles could happen, like we think it will for Earth eventually. Though for now, the wobble seems to be persistent and fairly set in stone. Of course, Mars is ocean-free, though there is a real chance that the atmospheric pressure alone could be enough to make the red planet a little all over the place. It will take many more observations, plenty more theories, and maybe even for the wobbles to eventually correct themselves until we get to the bottom of this unusual planetary phenomenon. There is so much out there for us to discover and delve into. From the stars we can see as we glance up above to the unusual happenings within our very own solar system. What will more research uncover? Scientists discover massive rotating disk in early universe. Our universe, believed to be 13.8 billion years old, has galaxies scattered across it. Most of these galaxies formed gradually, but in the past few years, the National Science Foundation have uncovered an unusual colossal-sized galaxy the shape of a rotating disk. The galaxy, deemed DLA 0817G but known colloquially as the Wolf disk after Arva M. Wolf, is a galaxy that rotates at 272 kilometers per second like our Milky Way. It's also the furthest disk galaxy from Earth, shrouding it in further mystery. Galaxy formation simulations showcase massive galaxies as something that formed across time via the merging of other smaller galaxies. The Wolf disk threatens this understanding. For the most part, it is believed that this galaxies only began to form 6 billion years after the Big Bang, and yet the Wolf disk was already formed and massive in the universe's infancy. The Very Large Array and Hubble telescopes were used by the team of researchers to analyze the Wolf disk, but it was the ALMA radio telescope that uncovered the galaxy itself in 2017. According to Joe Pesci, a program director, this observation epitomizes how our understanding of the universe is enhanced. With the advanced sensitivity that ALMA brings to radio astronomy, ALMA allows us to make new unexpected findings with almost every observation. Xavier Prochaska, a professor of astronomy at the UC Santa Cruz, stated, "Its properties are astonishingly similar to our own galaxy despite only being 1.5 billion years old." Marcel Nielman, a German professor and lead author of the study, stated, "While previous studies hinted at the existence of these early rotating gas-rich disk galaxies, Thanks to ALMA, we now have unambiguous evidence that they occur as early as 1.5 billion years after the Big Bang. This discovery is extraordinary due to the way it challenges our perception of reality. In Nealman's words, most galaxies that we find early in the universe look like train wrecks because they underwent consistent and often violent merging. These hot mergers make it difficult to form well-ordered, cold rotating disks like we observe in our present universe. Newman and his co-workers believe that the Wolf disk's immense growth happened due to a hefty amount of cold gas being involved in the galaxy's creation. And yet, this spawns more questions, such as how and where the gas came from, especially to maintain such a massive cosmic structure. The Very Large Array and Hubble telescopes were used primarily to analyze the Wolf disk's star formation. ALMA had looked at the galaxy's radio waves and its movements in terms of dust and gas. The VLA focused on its mass and fuel required to create its many stars. The Hubble telescope's job was to analyze the stars using ultraviolet light. The research proved that the Wolf disk produces stars at a velocity 10 times that of the Milky Way, if not more. As such, it must have been one of the most active galaxies in the early universe in terms of the pace of star creation. When Nealman discovered the Wolf disk with the ALMA telescope, he had been looking at a quasar near the disk. The quasar's lights were seen passing through a large amount of hydrogen gas somewhere around it, which clued the astronomers into where the galaxy was positioned. This is a method that has helped scientists discover many rare cosmic worlds. Nealman claims, mysterious particles are slamming into Earth. Several years ago in 2008, Pamela, a cosmic ray research apparatus attached to an Earth-orbiting satellite, noticed an excessive surplus of positrons in Earth's atmosphere. Positrons are the electron's antimatter counterpart. Antimatter is anything that is the opposite of normal matter, and when the antimatter positron meets an electron, they often cancel each other out and release a wave of gamma rays. Scientists have ways of tracking these gamma rays and can monitor them. Scientists and physicists have wondered about the origin of this positron surplus for a long time. And for several years, they seem to believe that the positrons came from pulsars located relatively close to Earth. Pulsars are rotating neutron stars that emit electromagnetic radiation. Sometimes spinning more than 700 times a second, pulsars whirl and smash particles into each other, including positrons and electrons. If enough energy is generated, these positrons can be flung out of the pulsar's rotation and sent across the cosmos, sometimes landing on Earth. But despite the popularity of this original theory, the new research team on the case believes that the intriguing substance of dark matter could be at work. From the Max Planck Institute for Nuclear Physics said, "When I started this work, I really believed it was pulsars. But these two pulsars actually cannot provide enough positrons in order to account for this positron excess." However, not everyone in the astrophysics community believes that dark matter is at work, and some are even accusing Lopez Cotto's team of misinterpreting data. Still on the side of pulsars, saying, "I am as convinced as ever that these pulsars are contributing very significantly to the local positron excess and very well could dominate it." Since 2015, a research team at the High-Altitude Water Cherenkov Gamma Ray Observatory in Mexico's Bicote-Alazaba National Park has been analyzing and tracking high-energy particles such as these positrons. After careful analysis, the research team has concluded that the pulsars most often credited for the positron excess, commonly known as Geminga and Monogem, are not moving fast enough to send positrons all the way to Earth. Even though these pulsars may not be the reason for Earth's positron excess, the explanation should not necessarily jump straight to a dark matter explanation. Cooper and MIT's Tracy Slater both remain skeptical about the possibility of this explanation. Since dark matter is said to make up the majority of the universe's mass, Slater says that if the positrons were the product of dark matter, the evidence would be everywhere. The truth is that no one knows where exactly these particles are coming from. Pulsars may be hurtling them towards Earth, or maybe dark matter annihilation is to blame. The only way to find out is to keep observing, researching, and analyzing. Missing black hole with 10 billion solar masses. When it comes to space, there is one thing that we have all heard about: black holes. Books, movies, and TV love to feature this celestial phenomenon. Though our grasp of understanding is rather tenuous, it seems that a black hole exists at the very center of each galaxy, drawing anything and everything into it with its unparalleled gravitational pull. As such, it seems that keeping track of black holes would be the easy part. If they are so huge, monumental, and powerful, how could one go missing? Even so, that is exactly what happened with this black hole. About a decade ago, Dr. Mark Postman, a member of the Space Telescope Science Institute, was surveying surrounding galaxies with the famous Hubble Space Telescope. While surveying, Dr. Postman found a supergiant galaxy now referred to as A2261 BCG with no black hole at the center. Indeed, the finding was exceedingly strange. An expert of galactic nuclei at the National Optical Infrared Astronomy Research Laboratory in Tucson, Arizona, Todd Lauer, added that the absence of the black hole was really unusual. According to everything we know about black holes, this supergiant galaxy must have one at its center. This black hole is expected to house 10 billion solar masses, while the black hole at the center of our own galaxy, the Milky Way, has only 4 billion. It seems impossible and unfathomable that a black hole of this size has simply evaded notice or attention. So what exactly is happening? Using the ideas postulated by three astronomers, Mitchell Bagelman, Martin Rees, and Robert Blandford, one theory says that A2261 BCG originally had two black holes that eventually combined and turned into nothing. Of course, if the burst was unequal on both sides, the impact could have sent one of the black holes flying through the galaxy. However, after analyzing and surveying A2261 BCG even further, scientists found something interesting. The diffuse core of the galaxy seems to house 4 little knots of light, causing some to think that the black hole's gravitational pull is keeping them there. Sarah Birksballer of West Virginia University led a surveying team with the hopes of untangling what the 4 knots could be. They found that 2 of them were most likely 2 smaller galaxies existing inside the main galaxy. Hubble was unable to provide enough details on the other 2 knots to reach a sound conclusion. The James Webb Space Telescope was launched in late 2021. Astronomers are hopeful that a telescope of this power and magnitude will be able to describe the 4 knots in detail and tell us the location of the missing black hole. Despite how improbable it seems that a black hole housing 10 billion solar masses could evade detection for so long, it just goes to show that outer space holds more mysteries than we ever thought. NASA spacecraft finds crash site of Indian lunar lander. Despite being lost for months, NASA was able to find pieces of a small Indian spacecraft called Vikram that India attempted to land on the moon in September of 2019. If Vikram, a part of India's Chandrayaan-2 mission to the moon, had been able to reach the surface of the moon without crashing, India would have been only the 4th country to put a lander on the moon. Unfortunately, Vikram diverted from its planned descent trajectory and crashed. Despite claiming to have located the lunar lander the day after the crash, India never published images of the landing site. While the NASA spacecraft, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, passed over the mission's landing site multiple times after the crash, finding the impact scar proved challenging. NASA scientists have noted that it is possible Vikram was hiding in the shadows. The crash reignited interest in the moon for many people, including Shanmugha Subramanian, an Indian computer programmer and mechanical engineer. He noted, "The crash landing of Vikram rekindled an interest in the moon not only for me and others also. I think even if Vikram had landed and sent some images, he would have never had such interest. For the first few days I was scanning the images randomly and there were a lot of false positives." In his free time, Subramanian took an active part in the search for Vikram's crash site and took into account the last known velocity and position of the spacecraft to determine where he should have been looking. After scouring the moon's surface, he was able to detect a white speck about 2/3 of a mile from Vikram's planned landing site. Amazingly, Subramanian reported his finding to NASA scientists on Twitter, who confirmed his discovery and began searching the surrounding site. They found the landing point was about 2,500 feet from the piece of debris Subramanian had spotted. One of the most fascinating aspects of this story is the fact that Shanmugha Subramanian, a computer programmer, was credited by NASA for finding the Vikram lander on the moon's surface. This tells us that with the amount of information now available on the internet, regular people can make discoveries from the comfort of their own homes that even NASA cannot. This is something that was never possible before. Scientists say Andromeda has swallowed other galaxies and ours is next. The Milky Way's sibling galaxy, Andromeda, has devoured countless smaller galaxies in its 10 billion-year lifetime. It should be no surprise that as the closest galaxy to it, we are destined to become Andromeda's next meal. The galaxy is set to collide with our Milky Way in a mere 4 billion years. Granted, none of us will be alive to witness the event. But cosmically speaking, 4 billion years is but a handful of time. Who knows what will become of the Earth by then, or of us? Perhaps our descendants will be alive to witness the cataclysm, or perhaps humanity will fall long before then. Regardless, Andromeda will swallow us. Researchers have dedicated themselves to studying Andromeda's previous cosmic meals via analyzing the cloud of gas that surrounds the galaxy. This research showed that Andromeda has undergone 2 prior large feeding events. The first occurred in the ancient period of our cosmos, whereas the second happened within at least a few billion years of our existence. Scientists used the Pan-Andromeda Archaeological Survey with a telescope atop of the Mauna Kea in Hawaii, owned by Canada, France, and Hawaii. The PANAS is designed to recreate Andromeda's structure as it was billions of years ago in its components and evolution. This field of the industry is often referred to as galactic archaeology. The research is run by Dougal McKee, who states the globular clusters that we measured were probably not formed when smaller galaxies were shredded by Andromeda. The most likely scenario based on the properties of the clusters is that they were formed in the smaller galaxies, and when those galaxies were later destroyed by Andromeda, the clusters were deposited into Andromeda's halo. The aforementioned clusters seem to have been from the GC hub group, or the feeding that occurred recently, speaking of course in cosmic terms. Comparatively, the scientists deemed the clusters formed from the ancient feeding the GC non-group. The separate groups rotate at different angles around Andromeda. It is uncertain whether Andromeda devoured several tiny galaxies or 2 or more large ones. Mackey stated that his team's observations are broadly consistent and assures everyone that they constantly check their data to ensure their research is accurate. In the future, the team is hoping to use the Hubble Space Telescope to further their research and to find out more about the elusive Andromeda. Regarding Andromeda's past galactic binges, Mackey claims we can no longer see the streams left over from the destruction of whatever system or systems were destroyed. The stars are there, but their spatial positions have long since spread out to form a relatively smooth overall distribution. The Milky Way and Andromeda have roughly the same mass. This means that the future collision between the Milky Way and Andromeda won't proceed in the same way as for the smaller galaxies Andromeda has eaten in the past. Mackey states that, at least in theory, the collision will be destructive, immense, and bright. He believes that the collision will cause both galaxies to fracture their spiral disks and that they will merge into something more elliptical in form. Fortunately for future descendants, should humanity still exist, Earth should be preserved from any harm and will bring several centuries' worth of glorious skies. The most famous galaxy. Its existence brings on the question just how many galaxies exist. Counting galaxies, the vast collection of stars that populate our universe, seems like an impossible feat. The first deterrent is simply how many there may be. Once we get to counting multiple billions of galaxies, the maths gets a little tricky. Another deterrent to finding the real number are the limitations of our instruments. In order to get a good view of space, a telescope needs to have an aperture about the diameter of the primary lens, and to avoid distortion from Earth's air, it must be located above the atmosphere. Despite the difficulty of counting galaxies, scientists have not been deterred. An example of astronomers attempting a count is how they used an image made from the combination of 10 years from the Hubble Space Telescope called Hubble Extreme Deep Field, or XDF. The telescope focused on a patch of sky for 50 days of repeated visits. Through many hours of collecting faint light, the XDF was able to detect thousands of galaxies, making it the most in-depth image of the universe ever taken at the time. The Hubble Space Telescope had been an incredible source of information for astronomers in its 19 years of shuttle missions. In its 5th year, astronomers pointed the telescope at a region called Ursa Major, and in just 10 days of observations it found about 3,000 galaxies in one frame. Hubble was also pointed twice at a spot in the Fornax constellation and at a portion of the ultra-deep field. With each experiment, thousands of galaxies were detected. Due to the sheer number of galaxies detected in multiple small regions, Hubble revealed about 100 billion galaxies. However, some experts expect the number to increase to 200 billion once telescope technology improves. Scientists discover a weird debris disk around a nearby star. Space is full of all sorts of randomly unique phenomena. Just when we think we have figured out the rules, something unusual comes along to confuse us all over again. Scientists have been baffled once again as a strange disk of debris has been found surrounding a nearby star. Researchers used ALMA, the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array, based in Chile, uncover this far-out mystery. The observatory is kitted out with a number of the world's most advanced telescopes, with the ALMA telescope itself having a number of highly sensitive receivers. What makes ALMA most distinctive is perhaps its ability to study the cosmic light from space that flirts with the categorical lines between radio and infrared. This sets it apart from other radio telescopes. This research utilized the Band 6 receivers, which in the finding of the peculiar debris disk. The odd debris is circling the star HD 53143, which is almost a billion years old and is similar to our Sun. It can be tracked down to the Carina constellation visible in the southern sky and is nearly 60 light-years away from Earth. The observations carried out via ALMA showed the disk in question down to millimeter wavelengths, yet the disk looks entirely unlike what we expected. We expected to unearth another debris disk not dissimilar to the Kuiper Belt, a circumstellar disk in our outer solar system, a face-on ring with patches of dust within it. As it turns out, this likely does not fit the newly observed disk. This debris disk has been described as the most complex observed to date. What's more is that the observations have led to the disk being categorized as eccentric. Typically, a ring-like debris disk sees a star sat in the center or at least near to the center of the disk. In elliptical disks, however, the star can be found at just one focus of the ellipse. Elliptical shapes are essentially ovals, each with two focus points on opposing sides of the oval shape, or rather on opposing sides of the ellipse. As it turns out, HD 53143 is situated in an elliptically shaped disk. Be observed before now thanks to the use of coronagraphic studies. These are intended to block the light of a star, as this lets us see when nearby objects pass, but this process concealed not only the light of the star but also the shape of the disk surrounding it. This star is thought to be part of a wider star system consisting of at least another disk and possibly an exoplanet, being any planetary body outside of our own solar system. Meredith McGregor, an assistant professor at the Center for Astrophysics and Space Astronomy, CASA, explained that the complex nature of this disk is twofold. Not only is the disk elliptically shaped with just one star and one focus, it has been deemed likely that there could be a second inner disk not quite lined up correctly with the disk we know of, be misaligned or tilted when compared to the disk we recently discovered. If this is the case, then there must be at least one planet in the system with a gravitational pull great enough to disturb the material within the disk. These disks of debris are more than bits of dust and rocks in space. Contrary to what you might think, they provide researchers with fundamental information regarding the history of planetary formation and evolution. If we have records of the past, we can make greater informed predictions about the future of both our own planet and solar system and others we observe out there in the universe. Hopefully, as we continue our research, we will be able to confirm the existence of both a planetary body and this secondary disk. A star 4,566 light-years away has just erupted. A star from the constellation of Ophiuchus has erupted. And even though the star is about 4,566 light-years away, you could have seen it with the naked eye. The star RS Ophiuchi was shining 7 magnitudes brighter than usual. Nova, or the eruption of a star, are extremely rare. This nova was even rarer, as it was a recurrent nova. This means that this star erupts periodically. Only 10 of these stars have ever been found in the Milky Way galaxy. RS Ophiuchi last erupted in 2006, so it was due for another nova as it usually has one every 15 years. But what causes these eruptions? First, it's important to know that RS Ophiuchi is a white dwarf binary star. Because it is a binary star, it is in close orbit with another star. In this case, the other star is a large red giant. As the two stars spin around each other, hydrogen is drawn off the giant star by the smaller dwarf star. As the hydrogen accumulates on the surface of the white dwarf star, it heats up. As it heats up, the pressure and temperature can become too much, resulting in a thermonuclear explosion called a nova. If there comes a time when the white dwarf planet accumulates so much mass from the red giant it may become unstable. If this happens, it will explode in a type I supernova, which will end the binary relationship between the two stars, but that has not yet happened to Iris Ophiuchi. The small star is still spinning around its red giant. Scientists predict that it will be another 15 to 20 years before the small star can build up enough hydrogen for another nova eruption. This means it will likely occur in the 2030s. One of the most extended gaps between the novas happened between 1985 and 2006 with a 21-year gap. This means that the next nova could happen over 20 years from now, but then again, it could also occur in the next decade. The longest gap was from 1907 to 1933, a 26-year gap. Every star eruption teaches scientists more about our universe. A star 4,566 light-years away has just erupted. A star from the constellation of Focus has erupted. And even though the star is about 4,566 light-years away, you could have seen it with the naked eye. The star Rs Ophiuchi was shining 7 magnitudes brighter than usual. Nova, or the eruption of a star, are extremely rare. This nova was even rarer, as it was a recurrent nova. This means that this star erupts periodically. Only 10 of these stars have ever been found in the Milky Way galaxy. Rs Ophiuchi last erupted in 2006, so it was due for another nova, as it usually has one every 15 years. But what causes these eruptions? First, it's important to know that Rs Ophiuchi is a white dwarf binary star. Because it is a binary star, it is in close orbit with another star. In this case, the other star is a large red giant. As the two stars spin around each other, hydrogen is drawn off the giant star by the smaller dwarf star. As the hydrogen accumulates on the surface of the white dwarf star, it heats up. As it heats up, the pressure and temperature can become too much, resulting in a thermonuclear explosion called a nova. If there comes a time when the white dwarf planet accumulates so much mass from the red giant it may become unstable. If this happens, it will explode in a type I supernova, which will end the binary relationship between the two stars, but that has not yet happened to Rs Ophiuchi. The small star is still spinning around its red giant. Scientists predict that it will be another 15 to 20 years before the small star can build up enough hydrogen for another nova eruption. This means it will likely occur in the 2030s. One of the most extended gaps between the novas happened between 1985 and 2006 with a 21-year gap. This means that the next nova could happen over 20 years from now, but then again, it could also occur in the next decade. The longest gap was from 1907 to 1933, a 26-year gap. Every star eruption teaches scientists more about our universe. Ultra-massive black holes. One of the most mind-boggling elements of space is its sheer size. Not only does space itself stretch infinitely away from us in all directions, but the objects within the ever-expanding cosmos display proportionately massive sizes. And when it comes to large objects within the universe, generally black holes will take the prize. Black holes themselves were already almost unbelievably large. So when researchers discovered a class of black holes set apart from the rest by their even larger size, scientists could not believe it, dubbing them supermassive black holes. But it did not stop there. Now there is an even larger class of this mysterious space phenomenon called ultramassive black holes that dwarfs even the unbelievably huge supermassive black holes. But what are ultramassive black holes, and why are they just so massive? This is a question that researchers have been attempting to answer since the discovery of ultramassive black holes, but it is a question that does not have a simple answer. A video by Kurzgesagt aptly declared that ultramassive black holes are perhaps the largest single bodies that will ever exist, which is an incredibly strong statement considering the sheer size of the various objects in space. They are not just slightly larger than even supermassive black holes, they absolutely dwarf them. Billions upon billions larger than our own sun. In fact, they are so large that they could easily fit multiple solar systems within them. Ton 618, the largest ultramassive black hole so far discovered, clocks in at 66 billion times the mass of the Sun, which is a number almost beyond comprehension. These black holes are usually found in the early days of our universe when slightly different rules applied. But this presents a problem for astrophysicists. According to our timeline of the universe, there was simply not enough mass in these early stages to generate and fuel ultramassive black holes of such epic proportions. At this early stage in the universe formation, there were just the beginning spirals of galaxies with only a few stars interspersed among the swirling gas clouds, which was simply not enough matter to generate black holes dozens of times the mass of the Sun. In a word, ultramassive black holes should not exist and were formed under impossible circumstances. Despite the complexity of the circumstances, researchers have continued to attempt to solve the mystery of how these gargantuan structures were formed. But it seems that every time a theory is proposed, it is quickly disproven as yet another example of the unnatural element of such large black hole formation. For now, having discovered the presence of ultramassive black holes must suffice as researchers to continue to peel back the layers behind how they could have ever formed in the first place. An asteroid barely missed Earth in November. Asteroid 2021 UA1. Asteroids are fascinating and many are absolutely zero cause for concern in terms of hitting or harming the Earth, but every once in a while there will be one or two which come in just a bit too close for NASA's liking. Small asteroids a few meters in size pass between the Earth and our Moon's orbit several times a month. Meteoroids, asteroids less than 1 meter in diameter, hit the Earth's atmosphere and explore pretty much every day. With tens of thousands of small rocks passing through the atmosphere daily, mainly from Saturn's belt, this is no surprise to us and none of these pose any threat to our safety here at home. Just a few months ago in November, an asteroid passed by Antarctica, missing the surface by a mere 1,800 miles, and scientists did not know about it until after the fact. But do not panic, although it came scarily close and closer than any having quite some time. For asteroids to be classed a threat, they have to measure more than 460 feet in diameter, and this one, UA1, was just 6.6 feet. It would usually have been detected sooner than it was. Astronomers explained that it approached the Earth from its daytime side. In other words, from the direction of the sun, meaning it essentially came hurtling from a blind spot in our observation capabilities. Furthermore, being so small, it would have been hard to detect and track. In fact, many small asteroids pass near to Earth without us realizing, scientists say. Regardless, as said, owing to its small size, it never would have been a proper threat anyway. For context, though, 1,800 miles is closer than most asteroids make it. A month after UA1, asteroid WK1 measuring 64 feet long passed the Earth at 625,000 miles, and this was one of the closest anticipated encounters for 2021. Similarly, the next 4 asteroids expected to come close to Earth, according to NASA's Asteroid Watch dashboard, will not come within 3 million miles of Earth. While it is shocking to think that an asteroid came so close to Earth without our prior knowledge, it's still reassuring to know that it was too small to have done any damage. And the next asteroid expected to actually collide with the Earth is thought to be some 300 years away, meaning we are all safe. Astrophysicist discovers numerous multiple star systems with exoplanets. The search for life outside of Earth is so relentless because there are so many possibilities beyond our own solar system. In fact, there are thousands of other stars besides our Sun with planets in orbit around it, including more than 4,000 exoplanets. This number greatly increases the odds of finding extraterrestrial life, and it seems that the number of exoplanets is only growing. Dr. Marcus Mugerauer, an astrophysicist with Friedrich Schiller University, Jena, has recently discovered and characterized several previously unknown star systems containing exoplanets, and his published study has sent waves through the astronomical community. To obtain these results, Mugerauer searched through 1,300 host star systems in the search for hidden companion stars associated with the host star. He explained his process by saying multiple star systems are very common in our Milky Way. If such systems include planets, they are of particular interest to astrophysics because the planetary systems in them can differ from our solar system in fundamental ways. Essentially, McGraw was searching for the vicinity of thousands of already known host stars in the hopes that they would have an associated companion star that also had orbiting exoplanets. He used the Gaia Space Telescope operated by the European Space Agency in his search, which ultimately turned up fascinating results due to the precise data that he was able to collect. McGraw's search revealed the previously hidden existence of over 200 companion stars. The data that he collected allowed him to precisely categorize these new discoveries, which spanned a wide variety as to type and distance. Most of the companion stars varied considerably in their mass, temperature, and evolutionary stage, and some were located up to 1,600 light-years away from the Sun. The team also discovered that, although most of the study's star systems with associated exoplanets were two-star systems, there were a significant amount that were arranged in a hierarchical triple-star system, and even one that appeared to be a quadruple star system. The distance that these companion stars are from each other was also heavily studied, as they could tell us information about how planets are formed under different gravitational influences. They discovered that, of the distances investigated, 15% of stars have at least one companion star, which is a much lower frequency than expected. These companion stars are also up to 5 times further apart than normal systems. McGraw says these two factors taken together could indicate that the influence of several stars in a star system disrupts the process of planet formation as well as the further development of their orbits. In addition, we will combine the results with those of an international observational campaign, which we are currently conducting on the same topic at the Paranal Observatory of the European Southern Observatory in Chile. We will then be able to investigate the precise influence of stellar multiplicity on the formation and development of planets. One thing is for sure, this astonishing discovery is sure to lead to even more discoveries about the universe in the very near future. Astronauts suffer significant permanent bone density loss in space. If you've ever dreamt of being an astronaut as a child, it's likely the images that rolled through your mind were you floating through space, discovering unknown planets and galaxies, and maybe even making friends with some outer space creatures. Something that probably didn't crush your mind is the toll that space exploration might take on the human body. It has been revealed that astronauts who spend 6 months in space lose bone density equivalent to 20 years on Earth. When measured over a year, it was found that only about 50% of the lost bone density returns to the astronauts who were on 6-month missions. A lack of gravity is the culprit response for bone density loss. On Earth, gravity has us putting weight and resistance on our muscles and bones, but zero gravity makes astronauts weightless. 17 astronauts make up this study. 14 men and 3 women who have all flown on the International Space Station in the last 7 years. The average age of the participants was 47. The members of the study hailed from various countries including NASA from the US, the Canadian Space Agency, the European Space Agency, and the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency. Lee Gable, a University of Calgary professor, worked with the astronauts for a year after they returned to Earth. Of the 17 study participants, 9 of the crew members experienced permanent bone mineral density loss. Each of the astronauts spent between 4 and 7 months in space. In order to counteract the bone density loss at the rate it is currently happening, space agencies need to put new and stronger measures in place. One crucial act is in flight resistance training aboard the International Space Station. It has also been proven that deadlifts are an excellent way to recuperate lost bone density. When astronauts do them in space, they are more likely to gain back more lost bone density on Earth. The bone most greatly affected by space travel is the tibia. Astronauts lost an average of 2.1% bone density in this lower leg bone with a reduced bone strength of 1.3%. Finer bone structures are also at risk. During spaceflight, they thin, and some of the bone rods come apart. Once back on Earth, the astronauts can experience bone connections, thickening and strengthening, but any that have disconnected cannot be rebuilt. This changes the astronauts' overall bone structure permanently. NASA Flight Center has also stated there is a medical strain for astronauts' cardiovascular system. Without the pull of gravity, blood can collect in the upper body and not be pulled to the lower extremities. There is hope that with further research, the physical symptoms of space travel will be mitigated. Kepler 78b, Earth's lava twin. If there is one thing that astronomers have learned, it's to never deal in absolutes. At any moment, a discovery might be made that disproves previously held beliefs of what is possible, and Kepler 78b is one of those cases. The planet is considered Earth-like in both its size and density, but scientists say that the planet should not even exist. The planet, which is a burning lava world and the first known Earth-sized planet with an Earth-sized density, orbits its sun at an incredibly close distance of less than 1,000,000 miles, circling the star once every 8.5 hours. According to scientists, a planet should not have been able to form so close to a star or even form farther away and move closer. Although it's not certain how the planet was able to end up in its current location, one thing that astronomers are relatively certain of is the fact that it will soon be engulfed by the star for that it orbits. Dimitar Sasilov with the Center for Astrophysics said that Kepler 78b is going to end up in the star very soon, astronomically speaking. Before continuing to expound upon the mystery of its creation in the first place, it couldn't have formed in place because you can't form a planet inside a star. It couldn't have formed further out and migrated inward because it would have migrated all the way into the star. This planet is an enigma, meaning that as scientists continue to study the planet to attempt to understand how it exists in the first place, Kepler 78b is being pulled on a fateful gravitational course into the center of its star, where it will eventually be engulfed. Although the specifics of how Kepler 78b formed and why it is able to survive so close to its host star are not understood, astronomers have recently identified it as part of a unique class of planets. These small, Earth-sized bodies have only recently been discovered and have orbits of fewer than 12 hours. Researchers hope that the study of these enigmatic planets will help them to further understand how they were able to form and orbit so close to their host stars, perhaps shedding some light on our understanding of the planetary formation process and the rules of the cosmos as a whole. Considered the poster child for these new planet types, Kepler-78b is the first of its kind to have its mass measured and be more thoroughly studied as scientists attempt to understand how it was able to exist and be created in the first place. Although current hypotheses are only guesses, there could be answers to several mysteries hidden within the history of the small, strange planet that apparently should not exist at all. A mysterious glow warms rings of Uranus. Believe it or not, a temperature reading -320 degrees Fahrenheit suggests a heat wave surrounds Uranus. This temperature, which is the boiling point of liquid nitrogen, was detected within the rings of Uranus by heat images recently produced by two massive telescopes in the deserts of Chile. As -320 degrees certainly is not warm from an earthly perspective. It is significantly hotter than much of space. Space gets so cold that it nears absolute zero or -460 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the temperature at which atoms stop moving. So relatively, a wave of -320 degrees can be considered quite warm. The discovery of a heat wave around the Uranian rings surprised scientists, since Uranus orbits far out in the solar system and does not receive nearly as much heat from the sun as we do on Earth. Scientists are unsure what is causing the warm glow shown in the heat images, but they are adding it to the list of reasons why the rings of the Uranus are so unique, especially the Epsilon ring. The Epsilon ring is the planet's brightest, widest, and densest ring. Unlike the rings of Saturn, which are made from both microscopic and meters-long particles, the rings of Uranus do not contain tiny particles. The Epsilon ring is made of rocks the size of golf balls or larger. Uranus rings also reflect less light than Saturn's and are narrower. The Epsilon ring measures up to 100 kilometers wide. Saturn's rings measure up to tens of thousands of kilometers. Because Uranian rings are darker, extremely large telescopes are required to spot them until 1977. Astronomers hope to learn more about the mysterious composition of the rings. It is possible that smaller material is merging together or something is pulling it out. Scientists are also eager to learn if the source material is the same or different for all of the rings. Rings can be formed through a variety of processes. Sometimes they are created from asteroids brought in by the planet's gravity, and other times they are formed from moon rim. Future studies are needed to further unpack the unique qualities of the rings of Uranus. Canadian police investigate after 14th human foot washes up on coastline. If you are familiar with unsolved mysteries and true crime stories, you might just have heard of the strange phenomenon of human feet washing up on coastlines around Canada's British Columbia. To make the story even stranger, these feet were all wearing running shoes, and some of the bodies have never ever been found. This instance is actually the 14th such occurrence of feet washing ashore. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police made the discovery of the 14th foot, but the pattern first emerged in 2007 and has yet to be solved. This particular foot was discovered on Gabriola Island in the Strait of Georgia. According to the report by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, a man was walking on the island's beach before noticing a strange object. It looked like a foot inside a hiking boot, which had become stuck inside a log jam, which is where a large number of logs blocks a flow of water. Some theorists have suggested that the feet are the result of accidents at sea, such as shipwrecks or plane crashes. Another explanation is natural disasters such as tsunamis. Another more sinister theory is that it could be the work of organized crime groups or even the plot of a serial attacker. Some people have attempted to play pranks on law enforcement by adding phony shoes with fake human bones. "We've had people put dogfoot skeletons in runners and leave them on the beach," said Bob McClintock of the province's coroner's office, and somebody even used some old chicken bones. McClintock suggested that the reason why all of the feet are wearing running shoes is because the light, buoyant nature of the shoes allows the feet to float on the water's surface. It also acts as a layer of protection from decomposition. A previous foot was found in a similar fashion on Vancouver Island. In December 2017, a dog walker found a shoe tangled in seaweed after his dog led him to it. That specific foot was identified as belonging to a 79-year-old man from Washington State, United States. That particular man was listed as missing but later found washed up. There is still no explanation for his passing of life. British Columbia Coroner's Office does not believe the feet are related to anything untoward. A number of the feet have been identified, and the coroner states that the individuals who the feet belong to either passed away accidentally or ended their lives themselves. The feet then separate from the body due to decomposition, but their shoes protect the feet until they eventually wash ashore. Still, the story is yet to be solved, as are the identities of multiple owners of the 11 boats washed ashore. When the first North Korean boat washed up on the western shore of Japan, their Coast Guard was seriously alarmed. There have been 11 boats found over the years since 2017, and more information comes to light as to what happened to this mysterious fleet. The first few boats that ended up on Japanese coasts had decomposing human remains aboard. The boats have been called ghost ships. Some had markings indicating that it belonged to the North Korean fishing industry, and a few to the North Korean army. One boat even had a tattered North Korean flag, although there have been no reports from the North Korean government of any missing ships. In November 2017, a small boat carrying 8 alive men arrived at Yuri Hongjo Marina. According to the passengers, they were North Korean fishermen who had gotten into trouble at sea. It was not long before the Japanese Coast Guard found another boat with 10 alive men who also claimed that they were North Korean fishermen. Both ships didn't have modern navigation instruments and engines. They were simple sea vessels that appeared to be rickety. One question which everyone was thinking when this story broke out was, can we believe what these guys are saying? There are a few theories as to why these boats ended up in Japan. Were these men, which were found alive, telling the truth, that they were indeed humble fishermen that just got lost in the sea? Another theory was that they were defectors or refugees trying to escape North Korea in hopes of having a better life in Japan. And others thought they were spies trying to retrieve information that the North Korean military can use as a tactical advantage against their enemies. The closest explanation to this mystery has something to do with the North Korean economic system of quasi-capitalism. There have been stricter international sanctions following Pyongyang's nuclear and missile tests. This created a bigger demand for agricultural production, putting more pressure on fishermen to hit their target. What made matters worse for them was the North Korean government sold fishing rights to China, scaling down the area in which North Korean fishermen can venture out to. This pushed them to take greater risks by going further out to sea, so far that their small fishing vessels were not able to withstand strong currents, causing them to end up on the shores of its Japanese neighbors. Whether or not this is true, nobody knows, except for the few men that came back alive, all of whom asked to be returned to their country after they've been found by the Japanese Coast Guard. What exactly happened to the rest of the boats that came back with nothing but corpses? Are there going to be more ships washing up in western Japan? The only certain thing in this story is that North Korea stays enigmatic about the whole issue. 11 boats and at least 20 of their men ended up in Japan, and the world heard nothing but silence from their government. Chicago's flying humanoid. Now, you might be wondering what a humanoid actually is. A humanoid is a science fiction term given to things that appear human-like, such as lifelike robots and some paranormal phenomena. In 2017, in Chicago, Illinois, multiple sightings of these types of beings were reported by members of the public. However, these humanoids were a little different to the robot-like figures people tend to think of humanoids as. These were flying humanoids, and in order to fly they needed something that would make them fly, and this came in the form of bat wings. Chicago residents reported sightings of huge human bats leaping from buildings and performing dramatic aerial maneuvers, drawing gasps from crowds below. They were initially described by eyewitnesses as tall, feathered with wings and glowing red eyes. But their appearance wasn't pleasant, and actually quite chilling. Many of the humanoids were spotted around the east side of Chicago, near Lake Michigan, which itself is known for unexplained activity such as UFO sightings. At the time, humanoid researchers believed that it was likely that it was 3 different humanoids that people were seeing. Each of these humanoids was between 6 to 8 feet tall, with a jet black, smooth wingspan of around 12 feet. Some even think that a few of these may have been other paranormal beings, namely Lexus from Mexico. These are believed to be ancient Mexican witches that transform into owls or eagles, but would still be far too small to resemble the figures seen in Chicago. Humanoids have allegedly been spotted across the world for hundreds of years, but paranormal enthusiasts can't quite agree on what they actually are or do. One theory is that they are a type of time traveler, but this doesn't quite add up the Chicago files. After all, why would they want to present themselves in such a bizarre figure? Robot-like, human-looking humanoids may fit the time travel theory a little better, but nobody is totally sure what the Chicago appearances could be attributed to. Other theories include the invasion of Earth by extraterrestrial beings, but for some reason this too seems a little far-fetched. Although witnessing humanoids is stigmatized as a bad, most people haven't experienced any adverse effects after seeing these creatures. A few nightmares or sleepless nights have been reported, but nothing particularly fascinating. No one really knows what humanoids are, especially these bat-like humanoids, but in all honesty they do sound more like something out of a horror film than anything else. Some questions are meant to be left unanswered. Photos reveal giant Easter Island Maui statues are covered in mysterious symbols. One of the most interesting things about Easter Island is the Maui statues. The country is most famous for these unusual statues that were said to be created by the Rapa Nui people. They were made from volcanic rock and resemble human faces. Most also have bodies that were sculpted, but the bodies were underground and therefore not visible until excavated. A recent discovery in 2012 unearthed the mysterious revelation related to the Maui statues. The bodies attached to the large heads of the statues have distinctive symbols and designs which were originally thought to be tattoos. The depictions were only discovered upon withdrawing the statues and discovering them on the back of the statues' bodies. Experts were confused as to why the bodies were decorated when they were kept underground for no one to see. Were they buried underground on purpose, or did they slowly sink over time? This led to other questions regarding the Maui statues and their varying features. Some face the sea whilst others face inland. Some have heavy red stone hats and others don't. How were they able to move such heavy stones around the island without modern-day machinery? Researchers continue to investigate and seek answers to these questions. But some just don't add up. Looking back to the strange markings on the bodies of the statues, it still remains unclear as to what they mean. Some designs depicted crescent shapes which are believed to represent canoes, but no one can be too sure. Academics have suggested that the figures could represent ancestors of figures that were high up in the tribe. Another theory suggests that the stones were dug up from quarries on the island, decorated at the quarry site, and then walked over to the different spots throughout the island. They are believed to be set up around the island to act as guardians that would protect the inhabitants from any danger. After further investigation and looking at other reasons behind the markings, it could have something to do with past farming methods. People believe that the statues could have been sculpted when digging deep within the quarry in order to find the most fertile soil. The statues themselves may have been kept as a symbol of food production, but there are no definitive answers. Could the writing be linked to this hypothesis? Although we may not ever know what the markings on the statues are, how they got there, and why the statues were placed in certain ways, experts are continuously working to uncover an explanation. Do you think we'll ever find out in this lifetime? It's difficult to say, but with the rapid scientific evolution we've seen in recent years, we may not be too far off. The Devil's Pool haunted. The Devil's Pool is one of the most haunted places in all of Australia. It's located just outside of Cairns in the state of Queensland and has been a popular tourist destination for some time now. The Devil's Pool can be found amid an untouched rainforest near large boulders in the town of Babinda. To those who are unaware of the Devil's Pool's dark history, they may find the crystal clear water and streams to be a majestic spot to enjoy and take in the natural beauty. Unfortunately, it has been deemed by the Australian Aborigines as a dark and dangerous place where only bad things happen. The Aboriginal legend explains that a beautiful woman that came from the Yidingji tribe was married to a tribal elder. At some point during their marriage, the woman fell in love with a younger man and they began an affair. They ran off into the woods to start a life together that no one would find them. However, the tribal elder was in a powerful position in their tribe and he sent search parties to look for them. Eventually caught and surrounded by the Babinda boulders, the woman threw herself into the water below and took her own life. She couldn't bear a life without her true love and saw no other way out. The Aborigines don't believe she ever left those waters and still remains there, looking for young men she can lure down below the water with her. What was first seen as a harmless legend or tale has gained some traction over time due to the number of young men that have gone missing and mysteriously passed away at the Devil's Pool. All but one of the missing or deceased have been men. It's also believed that the pool is more aggressive towards men that disrespect the area. One young man kicked a sign that was placed to warn tourists and he slipped, falling into the pool and lost his life. While the number of deaths is still debated, there have been at least 17 young men that have gone mysteriously missing or lost their lives since 1959. But what does that mean? How could they have mysteriously lost their lives? For starters, onlookers have witnessed victims being pulled forcefully and held underwater. there have been other mysterious ways these men have lost their lives. A 24-year-old man named Peter McGann climbed up the boulder and jumped through a small gap into the water below. Police divers were only able to uncover his body after 5 weeks of searching through the murky water of the bottom of the pool. Another young couple was also taken by the Devil's Pool during a flash flood. The woman ended up surviving, but the man was never heard from after that. One of the most recent disappearances was a 37-year-old man, Mr. Hoffman, whose body was found in October 2020, 48 hours after he was last seen. The man was there with another young man who successfully escaped the pool unharmed. A strong current ran through and swept Hoffman away. With so many horrible incidents, the area has been boarded up with railings and large signs have been placed around the Devil's Pool to warn people from swimming or getting too close. So why do people continue to explore the Devil's Pool despite its large sum of disastrous events? Maybe some find the risk exciting. When the ancient Greek civilization first journeyed to Egypt and laid witness to the ancient cultures, methods of construction, megalithic structures, sprawling cities, and seemingly advanced technologies, along with the civilization's incredible strides in mathematics and philosophy, not only were they completely intrigued by this, but they quickly worked to try to classify what they saw and provided it with the names we know today. When the ancient Greeks came across what they presumed to be a lion with the face of a man, reminding the Greeks of the stories of the Sphinx recorded in the struggle of Oedipus, they quickly named the structure of the Sphinx as an ode to their own culture seen in the Egyptian culture. However, outside of this original encounter, nothing else was known surrounding the strange structure. This in turn has caused various discoveries to be made about the structure and various theories to be put forward in order to explain the origins of the structure. Is there evidence of water erosion? During the early 1950s, French Egyptologist R.A. Schwalder de Lubitz visited the Great Sphinx enclosure and remarked that there was a substantial amount of water erosion across the structure. Believing that perhaps the structure had been submerged at one point in time and had not been significantly weathered by the wind as previous theories shortly after this claim, Schwal was labeled a mystic and slandered by countless other archaeologists, who believed that Schwal was making up the claim to appeal to a fringe group of theorists at the time. Despite these personal attacks, alternative Egyptologist and author John Anthony West sought out the opinion of the Associate Professor of Natural Sciences at the College of General Studies at Boston University, a geologist by the name of Robert M. Schott. Back in 1989, Robert M. Schott then spent a significant amount of time investigating the enclosure's geology and came to the conclusion that the main type of weathering that was evident on the Sphinx's enclosure walls were caused by significant amounts of water damage and not that of natural wind and sand degradation previously theorized. Interestingly, Robert Schott also found that the weathering was consistent with blocks found at the valley, leading Schott to claim the following statement. Therefore, if the granite facing is covering deeply weathered limestone, the original limestone structures must predate by a considerable degree the granite facing. Obviously, if the limestone cores originating from the Sphinx ditch of the temples predate the granite ashlars, granite facings, and the granite ashlars are attributable to the Khafre of the 4th dynasty, then the Great Sphinx was built prior to the reign of Khafre. Given the fact that the Egyptian government is keen to maintain the history that the ancient Egyptian civilization was responsible for the megalithic structures and not some unknown civilization that predates their culture, it would explain why efforts had been made to cover up the findings over the decades. Today, the water erosion hypothesis is still shunned by the Egyptological community. There's also been a lot of conversation about the secret tunnels under the Great Sphinx. Back in 1987, a Japanese research team from Tokyo's Waseda University began an extensive underground survey of the regions surrounding the Great Sphinx statue, utilizing groundbreaking technology at the time known as the electromagnetic sounding survey radar in an attempt to better image the sunken regions of the Sphinx statue. Under the direction of lead researcher Sakuhi Yoshimura, the team got some of the most accurate 3D rendered images of the statue ever seen, with the strange revelation that no one had seen coming. For some unknown reason, the Japanese survey team discovered an extensive system of cavities and tunnels inside and underneath the Great Sphinx monolith that were believed to have been previously undiscovered. According to the team, south of the Sphinx was a hollow tunnel believed to have been 2.5 meters wide and 3 meters tall, connecting two chambers, a small and large chamber that appears to connect to additional tunnels that stretched north, south, and southeast of the Sphinx's direction. Portions of shafts were found in unconnected areas beneath the Sphinx, with additional cavities found inside the structure of the Sphinx and beside the body of the Sphinx unconnected to the tunnels beneath the monolith. None of these findings have been pursued after the survey, with many denying the existence of the tunnels and shafts, despite the mountains of clear imaging evidence gathered under the direction of lead researchers. Another question that's been put forward is the Sphinx really a Sphinx? Originally a theory put forward by the groundbreaking author Robert Temple, there appeared to be overwhelming evidence that the Sphinx we know today was actually an attempt made by a pharaoh of the 4th dynasty to do nothing more than to claim the works of those before him. Evidence for this can be found when analyzing the head-to-body ratio of the large Sphinx statue. The head on the Sphinx is so small compared to the rest of its body that researchers had often believed, upon first sight, that it could have been grinded down from a much more massive structure. The second piece of evidence provided by the hieroglyphics located at the Temple of Temchifer that outline in great detail that the original god of ancient Giza was Anubis, and the accounts and images of Anubis in his jackal form are drawn all throughout the site in the same pose as of the body of the Sphinx, with no mention of a lion of any kind at that ancient city. Interestingly, this exact same pose was discovered in one of the only tombs of an Egyptian pharaoh ever discovered that had been completely undisturbed since his burial, the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. Within King Tut's tomb is a shrine to Anubis that demonstrates an exact scale of the Sphinx statue, but with the head of a jackal to represent Anubis, showing in overwhelming evidence that the original statue of the ancient city of Giza was supposed to be that of a jackal-headed Anubis and not that of a lion body with a human head. So, where do we get the idea of a human head and a lion body? The truth is, the only reason why the statue is referred to as a sphinx is because of old Greek mythologies, such as those of Oedipus, that talk about a lion with the head of a man called a sphinx, but no such symbol exists in that of ancient Egypt. This means that the hieroglyphic texts that describe the Sphinx with a human head to represent the pharaoh of the 4th dynasty were nothing more than forgeries, and these were by the then pharaoh to take credit for a great statue, which he had not created nor designed. In fact, a pre-dynastic pharaoh gives a great account about providing his royal dog as a grand burial at the site of ancient Giza. In this text, his argument for why he had such a royal burial for what has been speculated to be his guard dog was due to his want and need to have the dog buried before the great god Anubis, not only definitively proving that the Sphinx was originally that of the god Anubis in the jackal form, but also that the structure itself was created during the pre-dynastic times long before any pharaoh could claim ownership of its creation. So does the Sphinx predate Egypt? Given the fact that the pharaoh of the 4th dynasty forged the creation of the Sphinx under his name, countless researchers believe that the Sphinx could in fact be far older than anyone else has ever realized. In fact, new evidence and research today has found that it could very well be possible that the Sphinx structure itself is far older than supposed Egyptian writings and documents. One of the main reasons for why the Sphinx has been dated its current age of 4,511 years old is not due to carbon dating or other reliable efforts made to accurately measure its date, but rather because of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics and documents that detail that the Sphinx of Egypt's 4th dynasty. Unfortunately, it was recently discovered that these documents could very well not be legitimate and that the pharaoh of the 4th dynasty forged them for the sole purpose of taking credit of another past pharaoh's work. A common practice amongst pharaohs to rewrite history and take the honor of a past pharaoh's lifelong efforts. This could very well mean that not only was the creation of the Sphinx older than that of, but that perhaps the structure is older than the Egyptian civilization themselves. Further evidence of this theory can be found when analyzing the recent archaeological finds of strange bones discovered all throughout ancient Egypt. It is well known amongst Egyptologists that the ancient Egyptians treasured animals of all kinds, believing them to be the representation of their gods. It is due to this observation that strange structures and bones from animals all around the world, even from areas previously believed to have not been operating open trade routes, have surfaced all across ancient Egyptian cities. Described as Egyptian zoos, strange hieroglyphics and designs have come forward showing evidence that not only were the early Egyptians capable of owning strange beasts from around the world, but that they possibly possessed an extinct species of woolly mammoth. Dubbed as the world's first zoo, a 6,000-year-old ancient Egyptian cemetery was uncovered filled with the remains of wild animals from all around the world that should have been unable to collect from the reaches of early man for thousands of years to come. Skeletons of ostriches, crocodiles, leopards, and other exotic animals were found alongside pools of water, large fenced-in cages, and a potential animal hospital filled with removed teeth, claws, and evidence of animal surgeries. Though the importance of animals regarding the Egyptian religion was widely known, the evidence of the global reach of the species available to them, including species long believed to be extinct, has been a mystery that even the most elite of archaeologists and Egyptologists have failed to explain. This is odd, though mostly due to the fact that it is widely believed by historians and archaeologists that the oldest civilization to exist was merely 10,000 years old. However, evidence in the fossil record shows that the modern-day intelligent human has been around for more than 500,000 years. If this is true, why is it then that the oldest cities don't start appearing until past 10,000 years? It might have to do with the evidence of the extinct animals recorded at Egypt that went extinct at around the same time in the fossil record, merely 10,000 years ago. These extinct species included the mastodon, short-faced bear, the giant ground sloth, and many others. In fact, when Charles Darwin first visited the areas near the Galapagos Islands, when he originally discovered the ground sloth bones, they were so fresh that he believed them to still be a living species of megafauna, ultimately proving the recency of their extinction. So why was it then that around 10,000 years ago of all these species went extinct? Partly due to three strange reasons: large fires, a massive flood, and a sudden ice age. The evidence for these three events are widely known by archaeologists and research scientists that found in the fossil record evidence that showed that all around the Earth there appeared to be massive fires that were followed by a rapid cooling event. That only took about 4 decades, as well as certain events being hit by numerous tsunamis and large flooding. Many experts had originally speculated that perhaps a massive meteorite strike could have caused such a phenomenon, but no large craters supporting the theory had yet been discovered at the time of the original publications. However, recently a massive crater underneath an ice sheet in Greenland shows a tremendous impact point where a meteor could have hit, generating more than 700 megatons of force. So much force, in fact, that it would have caused a full-on nuclear winter. Any human civilization at the time, regardless of how advanced, would have been completely wiped off the face of the Earth in such a massive meteor strike. All of this happening at not only around the same time as a massive extinction event, but also around the same time the oldest civilizations would have been constructed. Could this be evidence then that perhaps the pyramids at Giza and the Sphinx, as well as many other advancements made in megalithic structures and creations, could actually more accurately have come from the efforts of human beings from before this catastrophic event, and the Egyptians were merely one of many surviving people to pick up where humanity left off? Given the incredible advancements we have made in the past 10,000 years, this could very well mean that the humans before the event could have been significantly more advanced than we are today. And the old stories of gods and kings could very well have just been the technological advancements before humanity had to reset due to such a catastrophic tragedy. But what do you all think of these impossible-to-explain mysteries surrounding the Great Sphinx of Egypt? Scientists had a secretive meeting about creating synthetic human DNA. Scientists are discussing the feasibility of using chemicals to build human DNA. If successful, DNA could be created without the need for biological parents. While still in the project planning process, a discovery like this could allow scientists to create human beings through a process that is similar to cloning. The meeting occurred on May 10th at Harvard Medical School. Attendees gathered as part of a group called the Human Genome Project 2, or HGP-2. Behind closed doors, 150 attendees and scientists discussed the feasibility of DNA synthesis, or the artificial production of human DNA. Their goal was to determine if the synthesis of a complete human genome could be completed within the next 10 years. Organizers described the meeting as a follow-up to the first Human Genome Project, where scientists worked to build a deeper understanding of human DNA. The difference between the original Human Genome Project and HGB-2 is the new project will build the human genome, not just understand it. An event organizers said the project title and intention had been misunderstood, and the meeting title Human Genome Project 2 was later renamed to HGP-Right, testing large synthetic genomes in cells. The topic alone has caused controversy in the scientific community, but the closed-door nature of the meeting has amplified frustrations. Absolutely no media coverage was allowed, and participants could not use social media during the meeting. Drew Endy, a bioengineer at Stanford, and Lori Zoloff, a bioethicist at Northwestern University, are outspoken in their opposition to the project. They caution, while we strongly agree that sustained improvements in DNA construction tools are essential for advancing basic biological science and improving public health, we are skeptical that synthesizing a human genome is an appropriate demand driver. The creation of new human life is one of the last human-associated processes that has not yet been industrialized or fully commodified. It remains an act of faith, joy, and hope. Event organizers defended the meeting by sharing the vast scientific improvements this research could make. A primary organizer for the event, George Church, a genetic professor at Harvard Medical School, said, "They're painting a picture which I don't think represents the project." Organizers like Church clarifying that the meeting was created to determine the deliverables and industry involvement needed to replace the existing genome in a human cell with a synthetic one. It was not organized to discuss the artificial creation of human beings. Church further explained that a private meeting was necessary because a scientific paper related to the discussion was under review for publication. In the scientific community, it is a requirement to keep this research private prior to its publication. It is an interesting and controversial topic for all involved. While this project is said to be still in the planning stages, it's becoming more feasible to expect this technology to exist in the coming future. This new technology could help us cure diseases and advance medical care for millions, but it could also lead to disaster. The reincarnation of Dorothy Eady. Among the most fascinating reincarnation stories is that of Dorothy Eady, a woman who is believed to have been a priestess and a pharaoh's lover in her previous life many thousand years in the past. Dorothy was born into a wealthy family from England back in 1904. She led a normal life until that fateful day when she fell off the stairs, injuring her head drastically. Everyone, including doctors and her parents, thought she had lost her life. However, she later miraculously woke and her life was different. The actions of the 3-year-old were not those of an ordinary child, and her parents had noticed it. On many occasions, Dorothy demanded her parents to take her back home to Egypt. She was certain she recalled her previous life, that she was born across the sea in Pharaohland, Egypt. She also recounted astonishing details from her time as a priestess in Egypt. From the accounts that she gave, she was called Ben Treshti and served at Pharaoh Seti's court. This child drove her parents crazy, and no one could explain her sudden behavior change. In one instance, when she was taken by her parents to visit the London British Museum, she acted even more strangely when they got in the Egyptian galleries, which were full of mummies and statues of Egyptian gods and goddesses. She ran towards them and started kissing their feet uncontrollably. Immediately after, she started screaming in an ancient, unfamiliar voice which shocked her parents even more. At 15 years old, as she was studying the Egyptian history, the teenager had a lucid dream with Pharazeti's mummy, an encounter that resurfaced many memories of her previous life, which made her start filling out her reincarnation puzzle. All these unfolding events made Dorothy leave Christianity to embrace the polytheistic religion of ancient Egypt. Her ability to quickly learn the Egyptian symbols and hieroglyphs at the British Museum astounded her teachers, but she explained to them that she was not learning a new language, but rather recalling a language that she had forgotten. Dorothy got married to an Egyptian student she met in England and moved to Egypt, where they lived. Upon reaching Egypt, Dorothy kissed the ground, saying that she was finally home to stay. She had a son whom she named Seti. She tried very hard her whole life to put together pieces of a 1,000-year-old puzzle of her reincarnation. Egyptologists would even later go on to prove the legitimacy of Dorothy's fluency in Egyptian. After they began studying neighboring native languages that arose and evolved from Egyptian in the area and found their slang and accents to directly mimic certain sounds, words, and pronunciations by Dorothy. This wasn't the height of her accomplishments, however, as she would later go on to help uncover many locations of ancient Egyptian sites buried beneath sand, discover secret chambers, and assist with the recovery of long-forgotten and hidden ancient Egyptian artifacts. In 1979, the New York Times wrote a piece on Dorothy that regarded her as the Western world's most intriguing and convincing modern case of reincarnation. 3-year-old lost in the woods says a bear watched over him. Casey Hathaway, a 3-year-old lad who had walked away from his grandmother's property and mysteriously disappeared for 2 days, was discovered unharmed in the forests of eastern North Carolina after a bear kept an eye on him. According to authorities, Casey Hathaway weighs approximately 25 pounds and stands 2 foot 4 inches tall. Prior to his disappearance, he was playing with 2 other children in his grandmother's yard in Ernle, North Carolina. Before phoning 911, his family looked for him for 45 minutes. Nothing was known about the young boy's comings and goings as a minute eventually turned into hours and hours later turned into days. A desperate search for little Casey was ongoing in Craven County, North Carolina. Through sniffing through all the icy trees and bushes, police dogs were able to assist in the search. Casey's family attempted to contact God and opened their minds up to the very worst scenario. Adverse weather conditions well below 0 degrees spurred a search that included helicopters, drones, canine units, divers, and scores of volunteers, as well as fears that Casey was not suited for the cold. The FBI, NCIS, Craven County Emergency Management, and the United States Marine Corps were all involved in the search for the youngster. The wind and rain had become so terrible that law enforcement agencies advised volunteers to please stay away. A few days later, though, Casey was discovered, repeatedly calling for his mother approximately a couple of miles away, 40 to 50 yards deep in the forest. He was already drenched, freezing, and entangled in thorn bushes. How did he get in there, and how did he manage to survive? Nobody knows what Casey was up to throughout his 3-day disappearance, and we may never really find out. Hughes said on Friday that the boy is a survivor, pointing out that searchers had to wade through waist-high water to reach him. Casey survived with only a few scratches and stated that all he needed was just some water and his mother. Casey, however, was taken to a nearby medical facility where he could restore some of his energy and return to his parents. Casey revealed something quite extraordinary to his mother in the medical facility, saying that a bear cared for him when he was stranded in the forest. His aunt said that he hung out with a bear for 2 days. God had sent him a companion to keep him alive, and that God is indeed a good God. Casey's account of the bear has made international news since that day, with several disputing if such a thing actually happened. Some scoffed at the story, claiming it to be a work of fiction. But Chris Norcott, a wildlife photographer who spends more time with black bears in North, as he had heard similar stories before. According to the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, the black bear is the only breed of bear present in North Carolina, and there were roughly 17,000 of them in the state in 2012. Berries, nuts, and small animals are among its favorite foods, and they rarely assault humans. Stuart Isaac disappearance. Stuart Isaac disappeared in Yellowstone National Park on September 24, 2010. Stuart Isaac was a 48-year-old family man, native of the Republic of Palau in the Pacific. On September 6, 2010, he set out to enjoy a cross-country trip to Yellowstone National Park. He drove approximately 32 hours from his Burtonsville, Maryland home and began his solo camping. The last contact he made with his family was a simple note that he left, informing them of his planned trip. Isaac spent several weeks away from home, and it was not until September 24 that he was determined to be missing. We know that on September 26, Isaac's black 2009 Lexus was parked at Craig Pass without a single hiking trail nearby. His car was found by the National Park Service during a routine patrol of the area. The car, which sported a vanity license plate reading Belek, was unlocked with the keys inside it. Whether Isaac had been the one to park the car here or if he was even in the vehicle at this time is entirely unknown. Craig Pass, where the vehicle was located, is a rather odd place for any car to be parked. Standing at an awe-inspiring elevation of 8,262 feet, it serves as a mountain pass on the Continental Divide. Located roughly 8 miles east of the Old Faithful Geyser, it is rather far from any moderately trafficked route on the Yellowstone National Park's Grand Loop Road. This unusual finding is what prompted local authorities to determine that Isaac was indeed missing. Upon finding Isaac's vehicle, a large-scale search ensued immediately. Authorities determined that Isaac could have been lost for a total of 20 days when the car was finally located. Considering that no spotting of him had been reported since September 6th. The National Park Service enlisted the surrounding sheriff's departments and the California Air National Guard to assist in the search. Together, along with rescue dogs, volunteers, and helicopters, they combed through the nearby areas to find any evidence of Isaac. Not a sign was found. The last reported contact by Isaac was to a former high school classmate, Matsu Evans. Records show that Evans spoke with Stuart for 2 hours on September 24th, almost immediately before his disappearance. This only added mystery and confusion to the investigation. The call was made at 6:30 p.m. according to her time zone in Guam, but this would have been roughly 3:30 a.m. in Isaac's time zone. Evans remarked that during their phone call she felt something was off. I was kind of surprised to hear from him because he seldom made calls. We text each other and we email. Now I know that he's missing. Why would he call me 2 days before something happened? However, during the call he did not allude to being in any serious distress and simply informed her that he was on his way to Yellowstone for a relaxing cross-country trip. What made the encounter even more curious to Evans was that she never knew Isaac to be an outdoorsman of any sort. He did not seem to be experienced in hiking or even to be an occasional purveyor of nature trails. Due to the unique circumstances of Isaac's disappearance, many have speculated that he had planned to disappear on the trip. The mysterious final phone call to a loved one and a note left for his family aligns with the typical procedures for someone contemplating to end their life. Let's hope he is found one day. The strange case of Keith Parkins. One of the strangest missing 411 cases comes from a report made back in 1952 surrounding the disappearance of a young 2-year-old child named Keith Parkins, of whom was later found more than 12 miles from the original place he had been standing. Details claim that on the 10th of April back in 1952, the Parkins family had been playing around their barn in Ritter, Oregon, for several hours before being called to come inside due to the winter snow. Once called inside, the parents of the children noticed that their youngest son, Keith Parkins, was not attending and so quickly went looking for him, fearing the worst. After an hour of searching, the family had failed to locate their youngest son and so contacted neighboring families, gathering as many volunteers as possible and began at a search party for Keith Parkins in an attempt to find him with the hopes that he had most likely fallen somewhere around the property. Given the small size and young age of Keith, the pitch-black darkness, and the dense snow, the family had believed he could not have traveled more than a few miles at most. A little less than 20 hours since their search began, the family would end up finding Keith Parkins more than 12 miles away from the home, lying face down in the snow with no evidence of tracks or paths as to how he ended up there. Given the strange nature of the case of Keith Parkins, a documentary featuring the missing 411 was made, with footage of survivalist Les Stroud retracing the steps of the young Keith Parkins through the rugged terrain, showing the impossibility for a 2-year-old boy to cross over a mountain pass, travel through thick shrubbery, cross miles of barbed wire, and end up on the top of a mountain in less than 20 hours. Unfortunately, given the child's young age, Keith Parkins did not remember any of the details of the event when he was older, with some believing that a far more supernatural or paranormal event had taken place that moved Keith more than 12 miles without his knowledge. The disappearance of Aaron Hedges. Originally from Bozeman, Aaron Hedges was a hunter, and along with his friends, Joe DePew and Greg Leitner, they ventured to the Crazy Mountains in Montana in September of 2014. Equipped with 2 horses and a mule, the group of 3's initial plan was to spend a week around the Cottonwood Lake Trail and create a base camp at Campfire Lake. Well prepared, Aaron was armed with a bow and arrows and a handgun. His fellow hunters, Joe DePew and Greg Leitner, carried rifles. On September 3, 2014, the hunters set off. Despite being well prepared, the mule that was carrying their supplies was spooked and ended up throwing their supplies off the trail. It's important to note this included Aaron's sleeping bag. It wasn't until the 5th of September that Aaron decided he should try and replace his lost sleeping bag and set off with a plan to shelter within the group's hunting camp from their trip the year before, and recover a cache containing a sleeping bag. However, DePew and Leitner insisted he return to camp before nightfall, as at night that area can become dangerous, and Aaron agreed to return to camp that night. Aaron would not return that evening. At around 4 p.m. that day, Joe and Greg tried contacting Aaron via their walkie-talkies. These were Garmin walkie-talkies, and it actually displayed each of their GPS positions. To the rest of the group's surprise, Aaron's GPS position showed that he was going the complete wrong direction and he was heading northeast. Unfortunately, this would be the last time they saw Aaron's GPS position. After Aaron had still not returned on the 6th of September, Joe and Greg had come to the assumption Aaron was indeed missing. This was further unsettling when, on the 7th of September, a snowstorm swept through the area, plummeting temperatures and unleashing at least 18 inches of snow across the area. Despite this realization, it wasn't until the 8th of September that Aaron was reported missing by his wife. Aaron's friends insisted they didn't report him missing because he was experienced in the area and also armed. The Park County Search and Rescue was tasked with finding Aaron, and Corporal Greg Todd, who was in charge, spoke of how this lack of urgency was strange and that he wouldn't have waited as long as Joe and Greg did to report Aaron missing, due to the aforementioned snowstorm making it practically impossible to search on foot. However, eventually dog and horse teams as well as 59 ground crew along with the National Guard and helicopters joined the search for the missing Aaron. It wasn't until the 9th of September the search and rescue teams finally had a breakthrough. Erin's boots were found along with a water container, and a nearby fire pit was found too. This was it though. There was nothing else in that area. What's truly bizarre? His search and rescue had swept the same spot the day before and had found nothing. Furthermore, given the severe cold weather, it seems very strange that Erin would take his boots off and leave them. He wouldn't have made it very far without them either. This was the only hard evidence until the 22nd of September, when officials involved decided that the search and rescue presence be reduced, awaiting additional information. There was no breakthrough in this case until in 2015. Roger Bislanovich stumbled across Erin Hedges' backpack and clothing whilst visiting family. The bag contained Erin's gun and driving license along with his bow and clothing. It appeared that smaller animals had been trying to get into the bag as small holes were present all over it. It was then on August 8, 2016 that at a nearby ranch, trailgoers found a human skull. With this new information, law enforcement in the area began a full-scale search on the and managed to find most of Erin's skeleton within just a 70-yard area. Erin's cell phone was found on his body, but despite best efforts, it was too corroded after spending 2 years outside on the trail. This case is mysterious for many reasons. Given the route it's believed he took, it's not understood why he went this way. After all, Erin was an experienced outdoorsman, and this was a route he should have avoided. That where Erin was found was within view of nearby buildings and not too far from a road. Why didn't he seek help? Though it's believed Erin didn't go for shelter due to not wanting to get caught for trespassing. Andra Johnson Hughes disappearance. Sandra Johnson Hughes disappeared into the Sierra National Forest, located on the western slope of Central Sierra Nevada in Central California. She was last seen entering the Johnson Meadows on July 4, 2020. An extensive search ensued following her disappearance, but only more mystery was uncovered. Hughes was 54 years old when she moved from Hawaii to California. A month before her disappearance, she began planning her camping trip as a way to enjoy nature and escape the confines of her home during everything that's currently happening. Before her trip, she was extensively trained in managing the wilderness as she trained to be a park ranger in college, making her disappearance all the more curious. Her family reported that they had last heard from her on June 26. The search began on July 5 after Hughes' belongings were found in peculiar disarray. Her niece posted a call for help on Facebook, encouraging others to help search for her aunt, stating that her campsite was found with her belongings and was quite disheveled. Things were thrown about all over, almost as if her car and belongings had been emptied out carelessly. Furthermore, her niece claimed that she would never leave her campsite a mess. Even a piece of litter on the ground would bother her. The Madera County Sheriff's Office then followed suit and openly asked the public to aid in the search for Sandra Hughes. Hughes was described as someone who liked to move around a lot. She had no children and was twice divorced, giving her the ability to uproot at a whim and live largely without restraint. There was a peculiar encounter on July 4th. It was reported that a group of hikers came in contact with Hughes. They claimed that she was walking barefoot, with a sizable bruise on her face. The hikers were rightfully concerned and offered her help, to which she declined. They insisted on providing some kind of medical assistance, but she again rejected their offer and continued on her path. Her family described her as someone who was very organized, making this behavior highly unusual and disturbing. On the 5th of July, there were more mysterious circumstances. Hughes' car was found lying in a creek that leads into Chiquito Lake. Authorities on the scene theorized that the vehicle was traveling at less than 20 miles per hour when it crashed into a tree and rolled into the ravine. This is extremely unusual for a crash. At such a low speed, it is hard to imagine why Hughes would have crashed head first into a tree. Typically at this speed, the driver has great control over the vehicle. This finding led the search to intensify its efforts. Nearly a dozen separate sheriff's departments joined the effort, assisted by rescue dogs, volunteers, and helicopters from the California Air National Guard to locate Hughes. Together they combed the forest, working day and night to find any sign of Sandra Hughes. None was found. The last sighting to reportedly see Sandra were two hunters passing through the woods near the Portuguese Overlook. The men claimed they saw her leaning against a tree along Road 5S01 near Besaw Road. At the time, they did not recognize her, and it was only upon returning from their trip that they recognized her from a missing person flyer. The hunters remarked that she did not appear distressed or in need of assistance. However, upon seeing her picture from the missing persons flyer, they said that she was visibly thinner. We can only hope she returns home safely. Patricia Meehan. On the morning of April 20, 1989, 37-year-old Patricia Meehan left her home in Bozeman, Montana. The last to see her there was her landlord, who noted strange behavior, stating that she seemed hyper. 300 miles away on Highway 200, near Circle, Montana, Patricia's car was spotted driving the wrong way by Peggy Bueller and her father. Bueller swerved to avoid the collision, but the car hit the vehicle behind them. Inside the car was off-duty police dispatcher Carol Heights. After exiting her vehicle unharmed, Heights witnessed Patricia leave her car. Patricia walked up to Heights and, as she described it, appeared to look right through her. Bueller, who remained at the scene, described seeing Patricia standing off to the side, observing the scene like a spectator, not like it had happened to her. Bueller then watched as Patricia walked into an empty field and vanished. When the police arrived, they followed a trail of tennis shoe tracks matching Patricia's. These tracks were found in an empty field nearly 3/4 of a mile from the accident. They followed the trail until 3 a.m. But the trail eventually went cold, the tracks fading into the terrain. After 2,000 missing person flyers, countless searches, and abandoned coal mines checked, there was no sign of Patricia. Her family could not explain the reasoning of why she was so far from home that very night. Even more peculiar, there have been over 5,000 reported sightings of Patricia. By June of 1989, 25 sightings had already been reported, including 3 from police officers. On May 4th, she was spotted at a Hardee's restaurant in Minnesota, reportedly drinking water alone for over 5 hours. On May 5th, she was seen twice, once inside a truck stop at Sioux Falls, South Dakota, drinking coffee through the night. She was seen with a man who appeared to be in his 30s. On May 19th, a sighting occurred near Patricia's home in Bozeman. Waitresses at a local restaurant noted she ate her breakfast hurriedly and appeared to be talking to herself. Later that week, she was reportedly seen at a horse auction in Billings, Montana. On May 30th, a trucker reported offering a female resembling Patricia a ride on a highway in rural Washington. She was also reported being seen at a truck stop near Tacoma. Sightings continued at truck stops all over the Pacific Northwest area. The last notable sighting was on August 30th, 1990. A woman with a strong resemblance to Patricia was arrested for littering in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The sighting made the newspaper, but fingerprints later proved the woman was not Patricia. Despite all of these sightings and an exhaustive search of the Northwest by her family, a solid trail was never found. As of 2019, Patricia's disappearance remains unsolved. The disappearance of Maurice Gordon Doc Dammitz. Maurice Gordon Doc Dammitz was an 84-year-old Christian reverend of whom had a relatively successful writing career during his time working as a Christian leader of his small community. With a number of successful publications under his belt, such as his works titled Focal Points of Christian History, Troubled Transformed, Burden Bearing, Mystery of Godliness, and Dead at the Top. Unfortunately, Dr. Metz was suffering from a severe blood disorder that made it difficult for him to be alone and had severe arthritis complications that prevented him from being able to move without assistance. Despite these physical limitations, Dr. Metz enjoyed spending his free time venturing out into the wilderness to locate ideal locations for mining precious gems and minerals. Metz had been a fan of leading his own private expeditions in the field of geology and would, when making trips out into the national parks or empty stretches of wilderness, to assist him during the trip and help him move throughout different pieces of rugged terrain. Doc's fascination for the field of geology would eventually lead him to joining the American Federation of Mineral Societies and Flatiron Gem and Mineral Club, becoming an experienced veteran of private expeditions and mining efforts. It is for all these reasons that it came as a shock to the wife of Dr. Metz when Doc disappeared when venturing out into the Pike National Forest located in the Front Range of Colorado, when taking a trip with his close friend McSherry to find a digging spot for minerals. According to McSherry, the two had found a small sandy pit close to the Rampart Range Road, where McSherry said he had left Metz to venture out an extra 50 yards to find his own sandy pit to dig from. After about 2 hours of mining, McSherry returned to Dr. Metz and told him they would be driving home soon because it would be getting dark. Doc had said that he would be gathering his tools while McSherry returned to his pit to pack up his things. After McSherry finished packing his things, he returned to Dr. Metz's pit only to find that he had completely disappeared without a trace. When investigations were made, detectives remarked that the disappearance of Dr. Metz seemed perplexing as there was no evidence of a struggle or any footsteps, markings, or tracks left behind in any direction. Additionally, all of Dr. Metz's tools went missing with him, with nothing left in the pit to be used as evidence. On the 18th of July, 1981, the wife of Maurice Gordon, Dr. Metz, wrote a letter to her governor, Governor Richard Lamb, asking for any assistance in helping her find her husband. The letter detailed that she believed some form of conspiracy had been committed against her husband, with thoughts that he had met some form of foul play or had been carried away, but that all efforts for an investigation were being impeded by unseen forces. Despite this letter, no further action was taken, with Dr. Metz declared dead in 1990. NASA's TESS exoplanet mission finds strange signals coming from dusty object. The Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite has been on the search for exoplanets, planets that exist outside of our solar system. The satellite aims to detect small fluctuations in the brightness of a star caused by a planet passing in between the star and TESS itself. However, planets are not the only thing that can break this cycle, meaning that it is more than just exoplanets that TESS has data on. In 2019, researchers spotted TIC 400-799224, a celestial object that experienced drastic shifts in brightness. Over a matter of just hours, this object became 25% dimmer. TESS rotates position per month, though is not the only resource available to use for this research. Data from the All-Sky Automated Survey for Supernovae and the Las Cumbres Observatory was also used. Between this mismatch of data, scientists were able to carefully piece this puzzle together. Astronomers believe that TIC 400-799224 is a binary star being circled by two other stars, one of which is pulsing every 20 days or so. What causes the pulsing? The current suggestion is that it is caused by a big cloud of dust near the star, possibly caused by collisions with small planet-like objects. The scientists cannot be certain as to how the dust appeared. As answers are given to one question, more answers appear. As the light moves, different elements absorb the light, leaving a discernible path that can show a number of important clues. Lopez was particularly interested in looking at the patterns of magnesium as she tracked the position of the material in the sky alongside the distance between the relevant gas and dust. As this research was underway and the cosmic maps were beginning to form, a rather standout structure began to appear. Lopez described the way quasars act as like spotlights in a dark room, illuminating this intervening matter, and it seems as though these spotlights have certainly singled out something interesting. Roger Close, Lopez's doctoral advisor at the University of Central Lancashire, was of course immediately interested, suggesting further tests to ensure it was not simply a trick of the light or an unusual fluke in the data. So, following two different statistical tests that were completed, the research team concluded the giant arc is in fact a reality. With there being less than a 0.0003% probability that this span of cosmic matter did not exist. The astronomers then made an appearance at the 2021 virtual meeting of the American Astronomical Society on June 7th. What makes this discovery so interesting is that it challenges so many underlying ideas we have held about the giant arc universe. A uniform expectation we have held about the universe is that even in the largest span across the whole universe, all astronomical matter will be distributed somewhat evenly throughout space. This concept is referred to as the cosmological principle. Now, this huge cosmic landmark of sorts is challenging this theory, making waves in accepted ideas as a 15th of the. Of course, there have been other large structures that have had people question the cosmological principle before the giant arc. Though it is important to remember that the giant arc is larger than the Sloan Great Wall and the South Pole Wall, both of which are known as huge cosmic features. Straying from the cosmological principle means reimagining the standard model of the universe. The theories, principles, and ideas that underpin our understanding of the universe have all been modeled by this cosmological principle. For this to be proved wrong is to change our understanding of so many theories down to adapting how we conceptualize gravity working on larger scales. When speaking on this matter, Lopez said, if we're finding it not to be true, maybe we need to start looking at a different set of rules. There are some truly spectacular things out there in our universe, some sat just out of view and some taking up masses upon masses of space. But when we find something that challenges everything that we think we know, that is when truly revolutionary research comes about. We may have found the most powerful particle accelerator in the galaxy. One of the many aspects of space that has long puzzled scientists is the question of where exactly the most powerful of cosmic rays come from. These high-energy streams of electrons, protons, or elemental ions are produced in a variety of ways and have varying energy levels. Generally, the higher the energy level of the ray, the more difficult it is to locate. Whereas scientists have documented the production of lower-energy cosmic rays from such events as massive supernova explosions, the merging of stars, and the suction of gas into a black hole, the provenance of the elusive higher-energy cosmic rays has been much harder to pin down, leading astronomers to conclude that the source is likely located outside of the Milky Way. In fact, they estimated that cosmic processes within the Milky Way were only capable of producing cosmic rays with energy up to 1015 electron volts, meaning that any particle accelerator stronger than that originating from outside of the galaxy would be producing rays over 1,000 times more powerful than the accelerators observable in the Milky Way. Until recently, researchers had no idea what such a massively powerful particle accelerator might look like. But according to recent observations recorded by the High-Altitude Water Cherenkov Experiment Observatory, it seems that a new and previously considered unlikely candidate for high-energy cosmic ray production could be nothing more than a large molecular cloud within our own galaxy. Previously, it had been so difficult to pin down the source of the most energetic of these faraway cosmic rays due to the tendency of the particles to veer towards the magnetic field generated by the Milky Way to such an extent that it was impossible to reliably determine where they came from. To circumvent this obstacle, the research team with the HAWC Observatory attempted to follow a breadcrumb trail of sorts through the galaxy in the wake of observed high-energy cosmic ray emissions. When the particles in these rays pierce interstellar gas clouds, a reaction occurs that releases gamma-ray radiation which does travel in a straight and trackable line. The HAWC Observatory contains several large tanks with ultra-pure water that flashes with a traceable blue light when contacted by radiation or high-energy particles, which allowed the team to locate the origins of gamma-ray emissions and then look for nearby high-energy cosmic rays. This method allowed them to identify the source of incredibly powerful gamma rays that could only have been generated by contact with immeasurably more powerful cosmic rays. In fact, perhaps the most powerful source of cosmic rays in the Milky Way. Almost invisible except by infrared telescope and downright boring as far as destructive potential or cosmic interest goes. It's safe to say that this cloud is one of the last places researchers expected to find the source of some of the most powerful cosmic rays in the galaxy. In fact, astronomers freely admit that they have no idea how this cloud could possibly be the largest and most powerful particle accelerator in the galaxy. For now, we must simply accept this news and wait for further studies attempting to explain this phenomenon to be conducted. Hayabusa 2 probe brings back asteroid Ryugu. Over 9 million miles away and standing at 2,952 feet wide is the diamond-shaped asteroid rock known as Ryugu. Its name comes from a Japanese folktale in which a fisherman visits a magical underwater castle and brings back a mysterious box, in a way that folktale has now come to life. However, instead of a fisherman being sent up in the vast vacuum of space, a Japanese spacecraft named Hayabusa 2 was propelled up there instead. What it brought back was not a mysterious box, but something much larger. The surface and interior rock samples of the asteroid itself could help scientists gain a deeper understanding of how our solar system and life as we know it originated. Yet the journey was anything but easy for the spacecraft and scientists alike. After Hayabusa 2 contacted the asteroid, a capsule detached from the main spaceship that would be responsible for the collection. From there, the capsule would be on its own to brave a year-long journey all the way back to Earth with its precious cargo. After an anxious long wait, a group of Japanese scientists used their tools to track the capsule down with radio waves and maps. What they were mainly on the lookout for was a visual display of the distinctive fireball that the capsule would create through the atmosphere. It turns out that it would land in the Woomera prohibited area in South Australia. Yet, despite their findings, the scientists could not help but bite their nails and remain uneasy for several reasons. For one, the weather did not seem to be on cooperative terms. Thanks to a recent heavy storm, the heavy rains and clouds could make the retrieval process far more difficult. The skies cleared. Now, as the big day progressed, scientists tensely urged the sun to rise so that their beacon signals could accurately be transmitted to the waiting receivers. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, the sun rose to finally illuminate a stunning fireball that streaked across the pre-dawn skies. Once it experienced a perfect crash landing on Lumira's red soil, scientists immediately jumped into action to disarm potential triggers and fly it all the way to Japan. They could not wait to examine the samples for all the potential stories and discoveries it could reveal about science as we know it. After a nearly 6-year-long voyage, they could finally unlock all the mysteries that were hiding within the rocks. Yet even though the capsule of the Hayabusa 2 made it home, the main spaceship is still out there in the dark above our heads. On its solitary extended mission, it plans to contact 2 more asteroids in 2026 and 2031, hoping to unlock more answers to the mysteries that have puzzled mankind for thousands of years. Strange objects punching holes through Saturn's F-ring. When it comes to space, there is truly no end to the mysteries that are revealed every day. Recently, scientists studying images captured by NASA's Cassini spacecraft noticed something interesting occurring within Saturn's notoriously chaotic F-ring. It seemed that there were large, mysterious objects about 1 kilometer wide that were penetrating the thin, icy ring, leaving trails of tiny ice particles steaming behind it for anywhere between 40 to 180 kilometers. These objects did not smash or blast through the rings at high speeds either. Instead, they made their way through rather leisurely at only 2 meters per second. At a temporary loss for what exactly this strange phenomenon was, astronomers fittingly named them mini-jets. Saturn's F-ring is notably dynamic and has intrigued scientists who were interested in unlocking its secrets, meaning that these mini-jets are another piece in the celestial puzzle. Astronomers have long observed the ability of moons such as Prometheus and Pandora, in addition to various other large bodies surrounding Saturn, to cause fluctuations and ripples in the F-ring, creating what seem to be sticky, snowball-like objects. Based on these recent images, scientists hypothesize that these snowballs, once formed, go on a journey through the rings, growing in size as they create their own orbits that weave spectacularly through the existing ice rings of Saturn. Interestingly, although this discovery was made fairly recently, the mini-jets have been around for quite some time. Scientists studying Cassini images from all the way back in 2009 first noticed the trails, which were incredibly tiny in photographs, and then on a scavenger hunt through all of the Cassini photographs taken in the intervening years to attempt to discover if the phenomenon was a fluke or something more regular. This image search was no small task, as the F-ring's circumference is 881,000 kilometers long and over 20,000 images of the region were taken during the time frame. However, at the end of the search, astronomers identified 500 instances of these mini-jets, which indicates that they are a much more regular occurrence than initially suspected and certainly warrant further study. Not only did the images captured by Cassini unveil the interesting mini-jets, but they also revealed a lot about the surprisingly complex nature of the F-ring. Carl Murray, who is a member of the Cassini imaging team, described it by saying that these latest Cassini results go to show how the F-ring is even more dynamic than we ever thought. The F-ring from 1 kilometer in size to moons like Prometheus, 100 kilometers in size, creating a spectacular show. And these ice trails certainly put on a spectacular show indeed. These images can help scientists studying space to understand how entities like Saturn, with its mysterious dusty rings, came to emerge according to the laws of the solar system. Additionally, astronomers studying Saturn and its rings can use these images and what they reveal about the mini-jets to better understand the flourishing activity occurring all around the giant of our solar system. For such a seemingly lifeless expanse, space boasts some of the most amazing occurrences happening without us ever noticing. Scientists say that 4 mysterious signals from outer space are coming from galaxies like ours. Astronomers have discovered strange signals coming from the center of the Milky Way galaxy. Australian scientists using the Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder radio telescope detected these signals 4 times over the span of 2 weeks. The transmissions, originating roughly 4,000 light-years away near the core of our galaxy, consist of irregular pulses and bursts that scientists have never seen before. During the early stages of planet formation, radio signals of similar frequencies are emitted. These new signals are more erratic than those emitted during planet creation, confusing scientists. Nothing about the signals follow a pattern that has been seen before. The intensity of the radio signal varies randomly. The orientation and rotational direction of the transmission is random and changes frequently, and the timing of the signals cannot be planned. Experts from the University of Sydney have shared they believe the signals are coming from a new type of star that we have never seen before. Zeding Wang, a PhD student in the School of Physics at the University of Sydney, said the brightness of the object also varies dramatically by a factor of 100 and the signal switches on and off apparently at random. We've never seen anything like it. Due to the variability of the transmission, scientists first believed it could be from a supernova, solar flare, or pulsar. But the emissions received do not match with what is known about those phenomena. Still, scientists have no idea what caused the signals. Their hope is placed on a new radio telescope being built within the next decade. The telescope, called the Transcontinental Square Kilometre Array Radio Telescope, will hopefully solve this mystery. Professor Tara Murphy from the Sydney Institute for Astronomy and the School of Physics said, "We expect the power of this telescope will help us solve mysteries such as this latest discovery, but it will also open vast new swathes of the cosmos to exploration in the radio spectrum. From discoveries that help us understand the universe to discoveries that make us question what we already know, the vast expanse of space continues to make us wonder." A mysterious giant blinking object has been detected near our galaxy's center. Nothing is more mysterious and unreachable than space. Despite decades of intensive study and research, scientists have only explored about 4% of the visible universe. An estimated 25,000 light-years from Earth, astronomers have found a star that appeared to blink out of existence for several months before suddenly reappearing. This unique star was affectionately named BVV WIT 08 and is thought to belong to a completely new class of stars altogether. This newly discovered star type is unexplainably enormous, reportedly 100 times the size of our Sun. While the blinking is thought to be caused by an unknown orbiting body that eclipses the star once every few decades. The name of the star appears to be a highly scientific smash-up of important letters. WIT actually stands for what is this? The case of WIT 08 has baffled astronomers. Not only is this star the first of its kind, but no one can explain what exactly could be eclipsing it from sight. The most prominent theory is that this orbiting object could be a planet or even another star, surrounded by a thick, opaque disk of dust locked in an orbit around WIT 08. This theory is supported by the discovery of a few other giant stars that disappear for months or even years at a time. The most famous example is Epsilon Aurigae, a supergiant star that is nearly eclipsed for up to 730 days at a time. And another giant star known as TYC 25056721 is regularly eclipsed for a whopping 3.5 years. There are certainly more to be found, but the challenge now is in figuring out what the hidden companions are and how they came to be surrounded by disks despite orbiting so far from the giant star, said astronomer Lee Smith of the University of Cambridge. In doing so, we might learn something new about how these kinds of systems evolve. NASA thinks it's found a frozen lake on Pluto's surface. Pluto is a planet of mystery, and discovering more about it is often difficult, with flybys sent to observe and capture photographs of its extraordinary surface in hopes it will give us more pieces of the puzzle when it comes to unraveling Pluto's past. NASA's New Horizons mission is ongoing, meant to study Pluto and the Kuiper Belt. Currently, the most recent probe sent to analyze Pluto is still processing the information it gathered and sending it back to Earth. Among the various pieces of information regarding the dwarf planet lies the possibility for Pluto to possess frozen lakes formed of liquid nitrogen. Pluto is covered by a sheen of frozen liquid nitrogen, but NASA's scientists have reason to believe that there have been times in history in which the elusive planet's surface temperature was slightly warmer, allowing for the icy sheen to thaw into proper flowing liquid. The current leading theory is that the pressure of the atmosphere of Pluto has changed throughout the ages and at one point altered enough for lakes to come into being upon the planet. This theory is further supported by the fact that New Horizons research spotted a pond-like feature upon the surface of the northern side of the planet. Alan Stern, who is the New Horizons project principal investigator, has stated, "Liquids may have existed on the surface of Pluto in the past. We see what looks to a lot of our team as a former lake." NASA scientists claim that certain terrain on the planet appears smoother than most of the planet's rugged landscape, which is more than likely to be, at the very least, the remnant of a liquid nitrogen lake. Alan Stern says it's very smooth, as if a liquid has frozen across one height. It's hard to come up with an alternate model that would explain the morphology. As such, the likeliness of the lake theory only increases the more evidence is gathered. Pluto's current average surface temperature is -380 degrees Fahrenheit, as the planet is positioned around 39 times known as astronomical units further from the Sun than our Earth is. This level of freezing cold means that melting frozen liquid nitrogen would have to happen at a very specific time, place, and temperature. NASA claims that because of its 248-year orbit at a tilted angle is within the realm of possibility for this to occur, since the atmospheric pressure of Pluto can alter immensely, up to 20,000 times the pressure it currently is at. As a result, the surface temperature can change within a moment's notice and, should the theory prove correct, create lakes and rivers of pure liquid nitrogen. It is important to note that this does not happen often. The last time scientists believe it occurred was 800,000 years ago, when the planet's surface temperature would have reached 103 degrees. In its current state, Pluto is in the midst of going from one extreme temperature to another, meaning it has a long way to go until the nitrogen lakes might be able to unfreeze again. Transneptunian body called 2021XD7. Almost everyone is familiar with the 7 other planets that orbit the Sun alongside Earth in our solar system, each accompanied by their many moons. However, there are also hundreds of other bodies which are not large enough to be considered planets that circle around the Sun on the outskirts of the Milky Way. These objects, which include Pluto after its role as the 9th planet was revoked, are known as transneptunian objects, or TNOs. They are defined as any minor planet-like body that orbits the Sun at a distance farther than Neptune. Scientists studying the vast expanse of these bodies hypothesize that lying amongst this are over 800 transneptunian objects is likely a body large enough to be classified as the elusive Planet 9. And recently scientists were able to unearth a clue that could point astronomers in the right direction in their search for this 9th planet. 2021 XD7 is a transneptunian object that was discovered in December of 2021 by Richard Boyle, who observed its path using the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope. This new TNO, which is over 30 times farther away from the Sun than Earth, is notable for the strange, irregular path that it takes around the Sun, a commute that takes an astonishing 286 years to complete. Although it is smaller than Pluto, it also displays a strange, tilted orbit that is notably different from the more regular orbits of Earth and its neighbors. It is this orbit that is so interesting to researchers, as many believe that understanding the cause of irregular orbits could be a major clue to the location of Planet 9. So why are scientists so sure that there is a 9th planet hidden in the dark region beyond Neptune? Based on calculations and observations of TNOs in somewhat irregular orbits, researchers speculate that there must be a hidden, as yet undiscovered planet whose gravitational pull is disrupting the paths of these bodies, causing their odd orbits and explaining the strange clusters that many of them form as they rotate around the Sun. Would be located far beyond the icy Kuiper belt that circles beyond Neptune, but its location has proven very difficult to pinpoint. Researchers have attempted to triangulate its position by observing the irregularities noted in the orbits of transneptunian objects such as 2021 XD7, but progress has been slow. Despite their proliferation, not much is currently known about TNOs, although many believe that the study of these mysterious bodies on the outskirts of our solar system could tell us a lot about where they came from and where the elusive 9th planet might be. Others are not convinced of Planet 9's existence at all and have proposed that the strange forces that have been observed are not due to the gravitational exertion of one body, but rather the collective gravity of the thick disk of icy debris that swirls on the outskirts of our solar system. Discoveries of transneptunian bodies like 2021 XD7 often come about as a result of the Dark Energy Survey, a 6-year survey seeking to map the outer solar system in order to develop a greater understanding about how the distant region operates, as the bodies housed beyond the Kuiper belt behave much differently than the large planets immediately surrounding Earth. Astronomers find 2 new galaxies hiding behind curtain of dust. Sometimes things are not always as they seem. A group of astronomers have been looking for a sample of distant galaxies, though their expectations had to be reassessed when they uncovered 2 seemingly invisible galaxies hidden behind what is being described as a curtain of dust, tucking the galaxies out of sight. The researchers used the Atacama Large Millimeter Array, or ALMA, to conduct their research, tracking, capturing, and analyzing radio waves. This is a less often used telescope, as typically the Hubble Space Telescope is capable enough, though as it uses ultraviolet and visible wavelengths, the dust curtain managed to stay hidden to Hubble. The galaxies have been given the ever-so-catchy names Rebels 12-2 and Rebels 29-2. It appears they are 2 of the most distant galaxies that we are aware of. The light from these distant galaxies traveled 13 billion years to make its way to Earth, though by now, as the universe has continued to expand, they are a whopping 29 billion light-years away. The study suggests that there could be plenty galaxies more tucked away and hidden just out of sight in the universe. This gives us lots of questions, challenging our current understanding of the universe. The new research has estimated that between 10 and 20% of the galaxies from the early universe could now be concealed behind dust clouds. This study serves as a reminder to the benefits of moving away from the status quo, and the research team used the Hubble Space Telescope. We could have remained unaware of these galaxies for decades, possibly even centuries. Mysterious cosmic object swallowed black holes. If black holes themselves weren't enigmatic enough, we're also starting to realize what black holes can digest, and it can be just as intriguing. June 2020, the news came in of something amazing that happened over 800 million light-years away. This event was so powerful, so full of energy that it actually managed to cause a crease in space-time itself. The event was a black hole eating an object we cannot identify. The event was recorded by 3 detectors on Earth, tuned to pick up the delicate change in readings, and the equipment picked up the black hole's feast on the 14th of August, 2019. Safe to say, scientists were extremely interested in decoding the information picked up by their equipment, and researchers got to work straight away. The amazing and far-off event called GW190814 is one of the most fascinating cosmic mergers that have been detected by the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, also known as LIGO. LIGO is a collaborative effort using the labor of hundreds upon hundreds of scientists and researchers. The story goes that GW190814 happened over the course of millions or even billions of years. The black hole and the mystery object continued to orbit each other, coming closer until they eventually clashed. One of the objects in the event was confirmed to be a black hole with enough total mass equal to 23 of our solar system's sun. The other object, eaten by the giant black hole, was measured to be around 2.5 solar masses. The report by the team of researchers found some interesting details about the mystery object. The object is in a state somewhere between having a surface like a star and being a complete vacuum like a black hole. The mass of the object is also in a strange state, with the mass being between the lightest black holes and the heaviest neutron stars. Scientists across the world are trying to solve the quandary of where a neutron star ends and where a black hole starts. The answer to this question could help us know how matter reacts in the most turbulent and powerful conditions of the universe. As the universe extends into the last stages of its life, most if not all matter in the universe could be made up of neutron stars and black holes, since these celestial bodies are the last stage of stellar evolution. Because of this, researchers are very interested in unraveling the complexities of GW190814. A scientist stated, if it's a neutron star, it's an exciting mass for a neutron star. If it's a black hole, it's an exciting mass for a black hole. Either way, it's an exciting discovery. A mysterious metallic mass on the dark side of the moon. You're probably aware that the moon is rather large, but how big is it really? To give you some perspective, experts recently discovered a mysterious metallic mass on the dark side of the moon that is approximately 5 times the size of Hawaii's Big Island. The mass is better described as an enormous crater that was imprinted into the surface of the moon billions of years ago. It's believed to have happened when the moon's surface has cooled enough for the crater to leave its mark. Now you may be wondering, how on earth did NASA discover this mass in the first place? They were able to use data from their gravity recovery and interior laboratory mission, as well as the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter topography. They were reviewing their previous calculations of the crust of the crater's thickness and density when they stumbled upon the formerly unknown mass. From the surface it isn't obvious, but it's dragging down the landscape and is known as a central depression. This information has led to information surrounding the interior of the moon, and scientists are at work to unravel even more. Understanding how this mysterious mass came to be could be the beginning of truly understanding how the moon was formed, as well as provide information about how other celestial bodies grow. There are already multiple trips to the moon in the planning stages, and this area has become a new target. Getting up close and personal with the unknown mass is the best way to provide experts with more information. The mission had previously collected new information surrounding the gravitational field to understand what's happening on the surface and underground. Whilst they've been able to gather this data, there's still a lot we don't know yet. With the information experts currently hold, there could be two explanations for this unusual mass. One possibility that when the moon's ancient magma oceans were cooling, dense oxides could have formed, creating the mass we see today. With that being said, scientists aren't sure that would have happened on that layer of the crater. Looking for another possible explanation, they reason that the mass could be the result of an ancient impactor. It's believed that the impact could have created a hole that then partially filled with molten rock. NASA still can't be certain as to how the mass appeared, will help the experts in exploration of the mysterious mass and potentially collect evidence to answer the question. This discovery has only led humankind to think more about the creation of all planets in our solar system, considering how small rocks and foreign objects most likely smash into each other, slowly creating larger rocks. It's easy to feel lost in it all, but we're on the road to closing the gap and finding what we're looking for. Scientists discover hidden galaxies behind the Milky Way. The Milky Way is only one out of hundreds of billions of galaxies in the universe, an incomprehensible number which leaves almost limitless opportunities for discovery by astronomers and scientists. One problem that has prevented further study of many of these galaxies is the fact that we simply cannot see them, as our view is being blocked by none other than our own galaxy. Recently, researchers were able to peer past the Milky Way in order to view hundreds of previously hidden galaxies for the first time ever. This region of space, which is a relatively close 250 million light-years away from Earth, has long been a source of fascination for researchers seeking to understand what is known as the Great Attractor region. So called because of its apparent gravitational tendencies to pull the Milky Way and thousands upon thousands of our neighboring anxious to solve the mystery and at last peer around this mysterious region. A team of scientists with the International Center for Radio Astronomy Research, led by Professor Lister Stavely-Smith, came up with an ingenious solution. They used the Cirro Parkes radio telescope, which could view the distance required, and equipped it with an innovative receiver which allowed them to filter out the contents of our own galaxy and effectively see through the Milky Way at long last. What they discovered was truly incredible, as almost 900 galaxies were visible, with one-third of this number having never been seen before. The Parkes telescope, which was fitted with the very best space viewing technology available, is capable of accurately mapping the sky that it views through radio waves at a rate 13 times faster than previous technology, meaning that the potential for discoveries is much more rapid than ever before. Of 100 billion stars, this one relatively small swathe of space filled with hundreds of galaxies presents almost limitless potential for study and discovery. The current pull for research in the region is the ability to get a closer look at the Great Attractor area, which scientists have been unsuccessfully attempting to get a closer look at for decades, ever since significant anomalies to the theory of universal expansion were brought to light. Lead study author, Professor Stavely-Smith, spoke on the significance of the region, which is pulling the Milky Way towards it with a gravitational pull equal to that of 1,000,000 billion suns, by saying, "The Milky Way is very beautiful, of course, and it is very interesting to study our own galaxy, but it completely blocks out the view of the more distant galaxies behind it. We do not actually understand what is causing this gravitational acceleration on the Milky Way or where it is coming from. We know that in this region there are very few large collections of galaxies we call clusters or superclusters, and our whole Milky Way is moving towards them at more than 2 million kilometers per hour. And although initial research of the findings mapped by the Parkes radio telescope is still ongoing, so far scientists have identified 3 galaxy concentrations and 2 galaxy clusters that could be responsible for the mysterious and inexplicable pull being exerted on the Milky Way. Hidden exoplanets could be home to alien life. Astronomy is the first science humans have ever studied. For tens of thousands of years, our understanding of the stars has developed. We admire, revere, and fear the cosmos before us, as did our ancestors. Even now, scientists continue to discover brand new things in our own solar system. The Earths and Venuses of space, it seems, are rarities. The majority of planets in other solar systems are what some scientists have deemed mini-Neptunes. These mini-Neptunes are in between being a gas giant and a rugged dwarf, small versions of our huge icy planets. Unfortunately, as mini-Neptunes are far from us, we have not yet developed a way to study them up close, thus shrouding them in mystery. It seems that they possess incredibly thick atmospheres full of built-up, merciless pressure. There is far more hidden underneath than simply bundles of helium or hydrogen. Recently, a team of experts on exoplanet research have challenged the view that many Neptunes may not be like Neptune. Using a model, their research revealed that atmospheric pressures of these planets very well allow for oceans to exist on their surfaces for billions of years. With the potential for water comes the potential for alien life, or at the very least, for alien microbes to exist. Dr. Nika Madhusudan, who is an astronomer at the University of Cambridge, has stated this result greatly expands our chances of finding life. By using the host star, astronomers are able to estimate the mass of an exoplanet to determine whether it is made of gas or rock, but it is near impossible to determine whether it has a solid or gas core. Except in 2019, thanks to the Hubble Space Telescope, astronomers were able to glimpse into the atmosphere of K2-18b, one of these mini-Neptunes, and discovered evidence of clouds and water vapor. Furthermore, just last year, it was announced that there is a possibility that one of these planets could have enough water to sustain earthly life. In Madhusudan's words, for the first time, we demonstrated that planets can be significantly larger than Earth and still have livable conditions. The desired outcome for astronomers is to find an Earth-like planet on which we could thrive. To find the ideal Earth twin, which unfortunately is much easier said than done considering this planet would have to be around the same mass as Earth, the same size, orbit, and either too far from the host star as the oceans would freeze or too close for the oceans would boil. While planets such as K2-18b could surely have Earth-like life on them, Madhusudan has stated it is not best to assume that these planets' conditions will be suitable for humans. Currently, the task is to find alien life, not to find another suitable habitat for ourselves. Hessian worlds are planets with thick and heavy atmospheres that are abundant with hydrogen, which allows for oceans to exist and flourish even under immense amounts of heat that befall the planet. This is the name given to the mini-Neptunes that match the description of potential life-having planets. Hessian planets tend to be fully composed of water with no continents, and often have permanent mist rising from the heated waters. Further research into exoplanets may reveal the truth to us within the next handful of years as we develop and establish what we truly mean by habitable. Bjorn Bennik from the University of Montreal claims that we, as a species, have far too high expectations and we have an idea of finding Earth 2.0. There may be other ways of finding other life that is not dinosaurs crawling around on the surface. Even though it is not the easiest thing to do, these Hessian mini-Neptunes can be tested. There are countless mini-Neptunes in space, and based on their positions and surroundings we will be able to correctly guess whether they have a chance of being habitable or not. According to Benaki, even if only 5% of the mini-Neptune Hessians match the requirements, it would still give scientists an incredible number of planets to investigate. The TRAPPIST-1 solar system is being studied closely by researchers, in hopes of finding more of these Hessian worlds. Methuselah, the oldest star since 2000, scientists have been baffled after finding what they consider to be the oldest star in the universe. Using the European Space Agency's Hipparcos satellite, they discovered HD 140283, otherwise known as Methuselah, a star which dates back to being 16 billion years old. But hold on a minute, from previous research, scientists had also concluded that the universe was only 13.8 billion years old, meaning Methuselah is older than the universe. Confused at how this could be possible, scientists got back to work trying to understand the seemingly discrepant data. 190 light-years away and in the Libra constellation, Methuselah is named accordingly after the biblical patriarch who apparently lived to 969 years old, making him the oldest biblical figure. Using the star's composition to understand and verify its age, it was found that Methuselah contains significant levels of hydrogen and helium in comparison to very low levels of iron. This suggests that it was formed back when the universe was young and was predominantly hydrogen and helium. For context, heavier elements like iron were only formed when massive stars appeared, carrying them in abundance at their cores. But still, this information did not help to confirm the errors in our knowledge lay. Was the star younger than previously thought, or the universe older? It seemed impossible for a star to predate the universe which supposedly should house it. The team of astronomers investigating this ambiguity therefore decided to focus their efforts on determining the star's precise location. In this way, they could use its luminosity and from that its age with more certainty. The brighter the star, the younger it is. Similarly, oxygen levels within the star could also help to compound the low iron levels found. Oxygen too was not very present in the universe for a few million years, so if it had low oxygen levels as well as low iron levels, it confirmed their prediction that Methuselah was around in the early stages of the universe. From additional studies, astronomers revised their calculation of Methuselah's age to 14.46 billion years old, a significant reduction from its previous 16 billion-year estimate. Still, this predates the universe. However, scientists gave this new figure with a residual uncertainty of 800 million years. Taking this into account, it just about makes Methuselah's age compatible with estimates of the universe's age. However, the mystery is yet to be considered fully resolved. Astronomers discover a water reservoir 14 trillion times the amount of water in all the Earth's oceans combined. About 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water in some format, be it oceans, lakes, bays, or glaciers and ice caps. It is estimated that all of the Earth's oceans combined hold something like 321 million cubic miles of water. However, two teams of astronomers detected a body of water 140 trillion times this amount. In other words, the largest and farthest reservoir of water ever detected in our universe. In 2011, while studying a type of superlarge black hole called a quasar, scientists made the discovery of this huge expanse of water a whopping 12 billion light-years away. Quasars are enormous feeding black holes which steadily consume nearby matter such as gas and dust. As they consume these materials, quasars emit high levels of energy into its surroundings. The quasar in question, 12 billion light-years away, which led to this particular discovery, is called APM 0827952555. It is a black hole 20 billion times more massive than our Sun and which produces 1,000 trillion times more energy too. With these astoundingly high levels of energy, astronomers did expect to find evidence of. However, the presence, as well as sheer size, of the body of water found was a complete surprise to them. The discovery shows astronomers that there is much more water present throughout the entirety of the universe than we once thought, from close to home in the Milky Way to corners far, far away billions of light-years away. The distance of this water also gives them insight into how long ago water was present in the universe. Being so far away, it suggests that water was around much earlier in the history of time than previously imagined. As it would have taken 12 billion years for us to be able to observe this quasar, scientists have determined that it must have been around from when the universe was only 1.6 billion years old. The water found was in the form of water vapor, which makes it an incredible find because atmospheric variables and conditions do not usually allow for such large bodies of water in the cosmos. For example, the majority of water in the Milky Way is frozen as ice. However, the energy emitted by this quasar has kept temperatures above freezing, hence making this environment unique. With more and more discoveries forming pieces of a puzzle surrounding the universe's evolution, it is fascinating to imagine what else there is that we just do not know. Astronomers find sprites in Jupiter's atmosphere for the first time. No, it is not something taken from your favorite fantasy TV or book series. Scientists really labeled their most recent discovery on Jupiter as elves and sprites. The fantastically named discovery was made via NASA's Juno mission, which is giving researchers unprecedented information on the massive gas giant. But these so-called sprites are not little creatures running around the distant planet. No. Instead, they are being used to refer to strange luminous phenomena, specifically a series of very bright and unpredictable bursts of light. NASA spoke about the discovery and stated that these kinds of light events have never been seen on another planet before. Scientists had predicted such events could take place in the solar system's largest planets, but this is the first confirmation that they do indeed take place. Scientists made the strange discovery when they were observing Jupiter's liquid-like atmosphere when Juno's UV instruments picked up the odd phenomena. Speaking of the discovery, a Juno scientist named Giles said UVS was designed to characterize Jupiter's beautiful northern and southern lights. But we discovered UVS images that not only showed Jovian aura but also a bright flash of UV light over in the corner where it wasn't supposed to be. The more our team looked into it, the more we realized Juno may have detected a TLE on Jupiter. When the scientists use the word sprite, what they are referring to is an event of transient light that is caused by huge storms beneath it. These events also happen on Earth but are not seen to last more than a number of milliseconds. Elves also does not refer to anything related to the pointy-eared creatures you might be thinking of. In fact, it stands for emission of light and very low-frequency perturbations due to electromagnetic pulse sources. These strange events have an appearance like flat disks and are seen in upper regions of atmospheres. On Earth, sprites and elves appear reddish in color due to their interaction with nitrogen in the upper atmosphere, said Giles. But on Jupiter, the upper atmosphere mostly consists of hydrogen, so they would likely appear either blue or pink. Telescopes detect the biggest explosion since the Big Bang. In a recent development, astronomers have discovered the largest explosion since the Big Bang. The explosion resulting from a massive black hole occurred at the center of the Ophiuchus galaxy about 390 million light-years away. This blast is not just speculation from eco-scientists. NASA was able to confirm the blast because the radio data and X-rays matched each other, found that the cavity was filled with radioplasma. While scientists have long been interested in the Ophiuchus galaxy due to its strange curved edge, there had been plenty of doubt about if this curve could have been caused by a black hole. Black holes can release vast amounts of material and energy as radio jets that collide with other objects in the locality. Despite the black hole theory, many astronomers actually believed that the cavity was too big to be a black hole. The team who discovered this incredible event are researchers at the International Centre for Radio Astronomy Research in Western Australia. The team used 4 telescopes for their work, each stationed in different parts of the world, including the European Space Agency's XMM Newton X-ray Space Observatory and NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory. The explosion was so large that it cut through the hot gas that surrounds black holes called cluster plasma. According to Melanie Johnson-Hollett, a professor at Curtin University and co-author of the research paper, we've seen outbursts in the centers of galaxies before, but this one is really massive, and we don't know why it's so big. The nature of this massive explosion has drawn comparisons to another destructive, large explosion right here on Earth, the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens, which destroyed about 200 square miles of wilderness. Despite these comparisons, the crater the eruption created could fit 15 Milky Way galaxies in a row. Another interesting aspect of this explosion is just how slow it occurred. According to Johnston-Hollett, the explosion looked as if it had been slowly happening over hundreds of millions of years. Excitingly, this discovery may have made it possible to find more outbursts in the future. Astronomers are now able to use low-frequency radio telescopes may make it possible to discover more explosions like this one. Telescopes detect the biggest explosion since the Big Bang. In a recent development, astronomers have discovered the largest explosion since the Big Bang. The explosion resulting from a massive black hole occurred at the center of the Ophiuchus galaxy about 390 million light-years away. This blast is not just speculation from eco-scientists. NASA was able to confirm the blast because the radio data and X-rays matched each other, found that the cavity was filled with radioplasma. While scientists have long been interested in the Ophiuchus galaxy due to its strange curved edge, there had been plenty of doubt about if this curve could have been caused by a black hole. Black holes can release vast amounts of material and energy as radio jets that collide with other objects in the locality. Despite the black hole theory, many astronomers actually believed that the cavity was too big to be a black hole. The team who discovered this incredible event are researchers at the International Centre for Radio Astronomy Research in Western Australia. The team used 4 telescopes for their work, each stationed in different parts of the world, including the European Space Agency's XMM Newton X-ray Space Observatory and NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory. The explosion was so large that it cut through the hot gas that surrounds black holes called cluster plasma. According to Melanie Johnson-Hollett, a professor at Curtin University and co-author of the research paper, we've seen outbursts in the centers of galaxies before, but this one is really massive, and we don't know why it's so big. The nature of this massive explosion has drawn comparisons to another destructive, large explosion right here on Earth, the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens, which destroyed about 200 square miles of wilderness. Despite these comparisons, the crater the eruption created could fit 15 Milky Way galaxies in a row. Another interesting aspect of this explosion is just how slow it occurred. According to Johnston-Hollett, the explosion looked as if it had been slowly happening over hundreds of millions of years. Excitingly, this discovery may have made it possible to find more outbursts in the future. Astronomers are now able to use low-frequency radio telescopes may make it possible to discover more explosions like this one. Telescopes detect the biggest explosion since the Big Bang. In a recent development, astronomers have discovered the largest explosion since the Big Bang. The explosion resulting from a massive black hole occurred at the center of the Ophiuchus galaxy about 390 million light-years away. This blast is not just speculation from eco-scientists. NASA was able to confirm the blast because the radio data and X-rays matched each other, found that the cavity was filled with radioplasma. While scientists have long been interested in the Ophiuchus galaxy due to its strange curved edge, there had been plenty of doubt about if this curve could have been caused by a black hole. Black holes can release vast amounts of material and energy as radio jets that collide with other objects in the locality. Despite the black hole theory, many astronomers actually believed that the cavity was too big to be a black hole. The team who discovered this incredible event are researchers at the International Centre for Radio Astronomy Research in Western Australia. The team used 4 telescopes for their work, each stationed in different parts of the world, including the European Space Agency's XMM Newton X-ray Space Observatory and NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory. The explosion was so large that it cut through the hot gas that surrounds black holes called cluster plasma. According to Melanie Johnson-Hollett, a professor at Curtin University and co-author of the research paper, we've seen outbursts in the centers of galaxies before, but this one is really massive, and we don't know why it's so big. The nature of this massive explosion has drawn comparisons to another destructive, large explosion right here on Earth, the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens, which destroyed about 200 square miles of wilderness. Despite these comparisons, the crater the eruption created could fit 15 Milky Way galaxies in a row. Another interesting aspect of this explosion is just how slow it occurred. According to Johnston-Hollett, the explosion looked as if it had been slowly happening over hundreds of millions of years. Excitingly, this discovery may have made it possible to find more outbursts in the future. Astronomers are now able to use low-frequency radio telescopes may make it possible to discover more explosions like this one. Parker discovers natural radio emission in Venus atmosphere. On the first ever mission to connect with the Sun, a spacecraft approximately the size of a small car detected natural radio emissions near Venus as it flew through the planet's upper atmosphere. NASA's Parker Space Probe took a short adventure by Venus and was able to send back data that confirms confusing changes during a solar cycle. This information could provide clues figuring out why Venus and Earth have so many differences. Venus and Earth were formed in comparable circumstances. They are approximately the same size, both are rocky, and their structures are alike. However, extreme differences developed shortly after the birth of these planets. Venus does not have a magnetic field, and its surface temperature is so hot that it is capable of melting lead. Venus is so inhospitable that other spacecraft have only lasted a couple of hours there. The Parker Solar Probe had its third flyby past Venus on July 11, 2020. The goal of each flyby is to allow the spacecraft to get closer and closer to the Sun. This was the closest flyby of Venus to date. The Parker Solar Probe managed to be 517 miles above the surface. Venus expert Glenn Collinson of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, was so excited to have new data from Venus. Even though the Parker Solar Probe was closest to Venus for only 7 minutes, a natural low-frequency radio signal was picked up. At first, the fin-frown shape of the data was a mystery, but Collinson felt it was somehow familiar. Then he remembered he had seen it before. During a previous work assignment with NASA's Galileo orbiter for an exploration of Jupiter and its moons, a similar frown appeared whenever Galileo passed through the ionospheres of Jupiter's moons. Researchers were able to use the radio emissions that the Parker Solar Probe picked up to calculate the density of the ionosphere that it flew through. The last time direct measurements of Venus' ionosphere were acquired was in 1992 with information from the Pioneer Venus orbiter. Those measurements were taken during a solar maximum, which is the peak of the solar cycle. The latest measurements are during a solar minimum, and have confirmed that Venus' ionosphere is thinner than during the solar maximum. These latest discoveries will help scientists figure out how Venus and Earth could have diverged down two such different paths after once being so similar. Radio signals from distant stars suggest hidden planets. Our universe is filled with wonderful things, from galaxies, stars, and planets to the smallest signals and frequencies which, if we can pick up on them, whisper to us that these celestial bodies are there, hidden away, just out of reach. In October of 2021, a research paper was published in the scientific journal Nature Astronomy which detailed the work of Dr. Benjamin Pope from the University of Queensland. based in Australia, and a research team at the Dutch National Observatory, Astron, who took to searching the skies for unknown planets. Astron oversees 2 observatories in the Netherlands, which means they also manage 2 of the greatest radio telescopes we have available today: the Westerbork Synthesis Radio Telescope and LOFER. LOFER has earned itself the title of the world's most powerful radio telescope and was utilized throughout this research. The team were able to detect radio waves that were being emitted from distant stars, which they believe could signal the presence of other planets we are yet to uncover. The team traced the signals of 19 dwarf stars throughout this research and believe that for 4 of these radio signals, the most viable option to explain their presence is that they have planets orbiting them, much like in our solar system. How Earth and the other planets alongside us orbit the Sun. Dr. Pope has said that this research could potentially lead to the discovery of planets throughout the galaxy. He continued, explaining that this is well established that planets in our own solar system are capable of releasing powerful radio waves. These radio waves are produced by their magnetic fields that are interacting with solar winds. However, while it is true that we have known that planets can produce these radio waves for a while, this research marks the first discovery of them outside of our solar system that could be indicative of exoplanets. Exoplanets refer to any planetary body that is not within our own solar system. Pope and his team narrowed their field of work slightly, focusing solely on red dwarf stars. A red dwarf is the smallest classification of star in the main sequence of a star's life cycle. These star types are the coolest and smallest, have a low luminosity, and are the most common star type within the Milky Way galaxy. With 50 of the 60 nearest stars to Earth being red dwarf stars, there was certainly an abundance of this star type to choose from in this research. Perhaps the primary reason that red dwarf stars were used was due to their intense magnetic activity, as an increased magnetic activity will likely result in a greater amount of radio emissions and stellar flares, all helping the team detect these signals with greater ease. The lead author behind this study was Dr. Joseph Callingham, associated with both Astron and Leiden University, both of which are based in the Netherlands, and he explained that the research team can say with fair confidence that the signals can be traced to the magnetic connection between these dwarf stars and the planets that remain hidden themselves. Callingham likened the relationship and interaction between the potential planets and these stars to that of Jupiter and its moon Io. The next step in this research is to try and confirm that these elusive planets are in fact there, just tucked away out of sight. Observations that have followed this initial research so far have ruled out the possibility of these planets being bigger than Earth, but there could be smaller planets orbiting these red dwarf stars. The LOFER telescope, whilst it is very powerful, is only able to monitor stars that are up to 165 light-years away, confining its use to somewhat close-by research only. The team has said that the completion of Australia and South Africa's Square-Kilometre Array Radio Telescope, due to be ready for use in 2029, could drive this research much further, allowing them to see further distances than ever before. Of course, this research project had some more surprising finds too, with magnetically inactive stars also appearing within this research. NASA's Curious rock sample contains ingredients for life. Sometimes we reach a breakthrough. This might be one of those times, as NASA's Curiosity Mars rover has collected Martian rock samples that may contain the ingredients for life on Earth. The rover found these samples on Gale Crater, where an ancient Martian lake used to lie. Scientists were able to finally measure the amount of organic carbon in a Martian rock with these samples. Organic carbon, which is carbon and hydrogen bound together, is used by every single life form known today. Organic carbon has also been found in non-living objects like meteorites and volcanic eruptions. The new research has provided some idea into the amount of carbon in organic compounds. According to Jennifer Stern, a space scientist at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, total organic carbon, or the amount of carbon found in an organic compound, helps scientists determine how much material is available as feedstock for prebiotic chemistry and potentially biology. While Mars does not currently have the conditions for sustainable life, there are clues that it once had a thicker atmosphere and liquid water, which would have made it a habitable planet billions of years ago. The samples in this study were almost 4-billion-year-old rocks, which scientists believe may have been formed from both the chemical and physical weathering of volcanic rocks. A lot of advanced technology was used in the study of these Martian rocks, including the sample analysis at Mars Instrument, which converts the organic carbon into carbon dioxide using high temperatures and oxygen. The instrument can determine the amount of organic carbon that existed in the sample by measuring the amount of carbon dioxide produced in the process, as well as determining the isotope ratio, which scientists use to understand where the carbon came from. Isotopes are chemical elements that are the same, except that they differ in the number of neutrons that they have in their cores. Scientists found at least 200 parts per million of organic carbon. This level of organic carbon is similar to the amount found in low-life parts of the Earth, like Atacama Desert in Chile. Scientists have pinpointed the Gale crater as an area of importance as they discovered chemical energy sources, oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur. These discoveries indicate that the crater may have once contained life. Scientists will continue to search for more evidence to prove this concretely. NASA finds mysterious bright spot on the dwarf planet Ceres. Every single planet in the universe is entirely unique, which means that with each new exoplanet that is identified, a host of unsolved mysteries and fascinating discoveries are revealed. The dwarf planet Ceres, which is located in the large asteroid belt that circles the Sun between Mars and Jupiter, is one such example. Ceres was always a unique planet when it comes to dwarf planets. Initially believed to be nothing more extraordinary than a large chunk of rock suspended in space, it still held the illustrious titles of being the largest asteroid in the solar system and the only dwarf planet closer to Earth than Neptune. But in 2015, when images revealed mysterious bright spots on its surface, the study of the planet became even more interesting. Photographs were taken of the planet by a probe hinted at the fact that there might be more to the chunk of rock. Then meets the eye as the images revealed strange, unexplained bright spots within the depths of a 20-million-year-old crater called the Okido crater. Detailed study of the spots indicated that the patches were a result of sodium carbonate, which is a form of salt, but exactly where this substance was coming from continued to elude researchers. Finally, after several more years of study, it appears that researchers finally have an exciting answer to the mystery of what could be behind the strange bright spot. New data analysis has indicated that Ceres has been harboring a secret subsurface of briny water under its surface with an exceptionally deep reservoir of the water collecting under the glimmering Okido crater. Researchers hypothesized that when the crater was formed, the heat and fracturing caused by the enormous impact mobilized the reservoir below, causing the briny water to and leave the salt deposits that now glitter tantalizingly on imaging. Additionally, ice volcanoes within the surface of Ceres that appear to have been active as recently as 2 million years ago may have further contributed to more recent sodium carbonate deposits. Because the sodium carbonate found within the crater requires moisture, researchers were astonished when they realized that some of the briny water below the surface must have bubbled forth as recently as a few hundred years previously, which is a veritable blink of an eye when it comes to space timelines. This discovery is profound for researchers hoping to find glimpses of extraterrestrial life in Earth-adjacent locales because of what sodium carbonate indicates when it is found on Earth. On our planet, the mineral can be in hot hydrothermal vents created by cracks in the seafloor that allow heat to escape into the ocean. These vents have often been studied with relation to extraterrestrial life because even though they are untouched by the sun's rays, a necessary component of photosynthesis, an astonishing amount of life teems within these seemingly inhospitable conditions. Although Ceres seems to be nothing more than an extraordinarily large rock hurtling through space, the presence of a hidden ocean complete with glowing sodium carbonate could be a huge indicator of potential life. Even just microscopic life would be an unbelievable discovery. NASA discovers rapidly growing black hole. We often refer to the missing link when we discuss evolution. It's a term that refers to a hypothetical animal, person, or creature that fills in the middle ground between human beings as we know one another today and the anthropods that came before us. This phrase has picked up traction and no longer exclusively refers to the evolutionary process, but instead, any time that we seem to be missing a piece of the puzzle, have something missing from connecting two dots, two processes, or two concepts. NASA has identified a black hole growing at a surprising rate, seemingly filling in an evolutionary gap between the galaxies that form young stars and the first supermassive black holes. A supermassive black hole is the largest type of black hole, despite its name not sounding all too scientific. These types of astronomical objects can contain billions of times the mass of the Sun. Black holes are objects that have experienced a gravitational collapse resulting in space, often casually referred to as a void, from which nothing, not even light itself, can escape. While we know a fair bit about when a black hole is classified as supermassive beyond the physical characteristics, there is not masses that we know. One theory is that supermassive black holes are formed from the cores of star-forming galaxies, which are usually cloaked in a great deal of gas and dust. The theory suggests that from these cores, celestial objects emerge as a bright object powered by the supermassive black hole, either in the form of a star-forming galaxy or a luminous quasar, an active galactic nucleus. It's worth considering that we have observed both the star-forming galaxies and the luminous quasars in the early universe, however they are both considered to be exceptionally rare. And point B, the supermassive black hole. But what bridges the gap? According to this theory, a rapidly growing black hole makes up this middle step, though we hadn't detected one before. In a 2022 study, astronomer Dr. Seiji Fujimoto from the University of Copenhagen and his colleagues used and analyzed data collected from the Hubble Space Telescope that just might help us fill in these gaps. The team uncovered an object, GNZ7Q, which sits in one of the most studied and most well-known areas in the sky. It lay undetected until this study. The data revealed that this object was around in the early universe, just 750 million years after the Big Bang. The object is a source of infrared and ultraviolet light, making it distinct from a galaxy but similar to the radiation of what may fall into a black hole. Dr. Fujimoto said that it is their belief that this object could be the first example of a rapidly growing black hole. There is, of course, further research necessary to confirm that this object could indeed be a rapidly growing black hole, and there is even more research required to see if this could in fact be the missing link. Nonetheless, right now, this presents the possibility for a huge step forward in our scientific understanding. Huge cataclysmic explosion must have happened in space. SMSSJ 2003222541142033 supernova? Old news. If you thought they were big and impressive, then you have probably not heard of hypernovas. These are bigger, more violent star deaths which explode more powerfully than a supernova. From analyzing chemical patterns and element concentrations never seen before, scientists have deduced that a hypernova must have occurred about 13 billion years ago. Named SMSSJ 20032254114233, scientists noticed the anomalous elemental composition whereby the hypernova had an ion-to-hydrogen ratio 3,000 times lower than that of the Sun. Not only this, but they found evidence of heavy elements within the hypernova too, with and maybe even gold. From our scientific understanding of the universe's formation, this particular ratio suggests that it was therefore formed around 13 billion years ago when the 13.8 billion-year-old universe was in its own infancy. This extremely rare finding was discovered as Dr. David Young and his team at the Australian National University used the Sky Mapper telescope to search for ancient stars. The hypernova, discovered 7,500 light-years away, has since been confirmed by the Australian National University's 2.3-meter telescope as well as the European Southern Observatory's 8-meter Very Large Telescope in Chile. Thinking back to the heavy elements found within the hypernova, scientists think this discovery may hold the answer to a long-standing dilemma within the astronomy community. When the first stars in the universe eventually died and exploded, they scattered heavy elements like carbon, iron, and oxygen across the universe, forming the next generation of stars. The heavier elements like zinc and uranium have for a long time now baffled scientists as to their origin. They could not have simply been created from nothing, and the chemical breakdowns of massive neutron star collisions did not explain the creation of these heavy elements. Therefore, the magnitude of a hypernova explosion and wider destruction seems the most likely answer to the unique chemical pattern found in SMSSJ 20032254114233. With evidence of an actual hypernova for the first time, it will be exciting to see what other unanswered questions can finally be put to rest. Astronomers have discovered a nearby super-Earth in the habitable zone. The possibility of a habitable planet out there in our universe or any universe is an intriguing notion for many people. Would there be life already on the planet? Could humans emigrate there to live if necessary? It is human nature to want to know we are not alone. Astronomers in Hawaii have recently discovered a new super-Earth using the National Observatory of Japan's Subaru telescope. The planet named ROS 508b orbits a red dwarf named ROS 508. Before we get too much further, let's go over a few key things. First off, what is a super-Earth? Super-Earth does not mean the makeup of a planet is better than Earth. It is a classification of planets not in our solar system that are heavier than Earth and lighter than Neptune and Uranus. A super-Earth can be between 2 and 10 times the size of Earth. A red dwarf is the most common star in the galaxy. It's small as its name suggests and not as hot as the other stars. What makes the combination of ROS 508 and ROS 508b newsworthy? They are only 36.5 light-years away. ROS 508b is a planet 4 times the size of Earth, and considering what we already know about the mass limit of planets, it's likely a terrestrial planet, meaning its surface is rocky and not formed of gases. It's also in the habitable zone, but this does not mean it can necessarily support life. The habitable zone refers to the distance from its orbital star, therefore creating the correct temperature to have liquid water present on the surface of the super-Earth planet. If ROS 508b cannot support life for certain, why is there so much buzz about it? Finding a little planet orbiting a dim star is no small feat. The discovery of ROS 508b shows off the success of the technique and tools used to search for exoplanets. This means we could be a few steps closer to finding an Earth 2.0, just in case this one doesn't pan out for our species. Galaxy discovered on the edge of the universe, Able 2744 Y1. The discovery of a brand new galaxy is always intriguing. Able 2744 Y1 is one such galaxy which lies on the very edge of our observable universe. This galaxy is an estimated 50 times smaller than our own Milky Way at about 2,300 light-years in width. The shocking element is that despite its tiny size, it produces 10 times the number of stars than our Milky Way does. It also has a redshift of 8. Redshift measures a galaxy's wavelength due to the universe's expansion. Until now, most galaxies have had a wavelength redshift of 7, this proving it is on the very edge of our understanding. The galaxy was discovered using NASA's Spitzer and Hubble space telescopes with the use of special gravitational lenses made specifically to help astronomers see further into outer space and detect distant galaxies behind the Able 2744 galaxy cluster by magnifying the light from behind those galaxies. The Able 2744 Y1 finding was part of the Frontier Field program established by NASA. The program was created with seeking further galaxies in mind and really reaching as far as we can possibly go in terms of seeing even further out of the universe. Try and witness more of the early cosmos. It's hoped that 6 galaxy clusters in total will be analyzed under the Frontier Fields program. According to Dr. Nicolas Laporte from the Instituto de Astrofísica de Canarias, we expected to find very distant galaxies close to the cluster core where the light amplification is maximum. However, this galaxy is very close to the edge of the Hubble image where the light is not strongly amplified. We are really lucky that we could find it in the small field of view of Hubble. In a statement, fellow astronomers commented, the long exposure image of the cluster Able 2744 is the deepest one obtained so far of a cluster of galaxies and is comparable to the Hubble ultradeep field. This is, without a shred of a doubt, the most primordial galaxy we have ever seen. Its discovery itself is a blessing to researchers as it gives immense insight into the early universe and how galaxies formed. It's so ancient that the light from it that reaches the Earth is from long-gone stars that faded 13 billion years ago. Our modern image of Able 2744 Y1 reflects how it looked at the time of the early universe when it was an estimated 650 million years old. This is an amazing facet and lets us analyze much of our universe's past, especially given that the current theory for the age of the universe is about 13.8 billion years. Despite being a primordial galaxy, the pace at which it is still creating new stars mimics the pace of early universe galaxies, which are believed to have done much of the same. Nevertheless, it implies that this galaxy never slowed its star production even billions of years later and is still going strong. The Spitzer telescope used the electromagnetic spectrum to provide further insight into the galaxy from the infrared data collected using the Hubble Space Telescope. The Chandra Observatory was also used by scientists to further their research, recording its X-ray wavelengths to find out as much as they can about Able 2744 Y1. NASA's Spitzer Science Center astronomer Jason Saras claims just a handful of galaxies at these great distances are known. Frontier Field's program is already working to find more of these distant, faint galaxies. This is a preview of what's to come. First detection of sugars in meteorites. Our world is essentially made of a number of building blocks, elements, and compounds important to life, important to environments, and important to developing worlds as we can recognize them today. In 2019, a new compound key to forming life was found within a meteorite. A team of international researchers uncovered sugars that are necessary in sustaining life inside of a meteorite. This has added some evidence to the existing theory that the chemical reactions that take place inside of asteroids can help to form some biologically important compounds crucial to life as we know it. An asteroid is oftentimes the ancestor of meteorites being their parent body. This means that if that theory is in fact true, then the meteorites showering ancient Earth so often may be a key element to the origin of life on Earth that we have been missing. The research team uncovered ribose, arbanose, xylose, and several other biologically essential sugars. These compounds were spread over 2 different meteorites, both rich in carbon. It's worth noting that these do have specific biological functions and roles. Ribose is a necessary component of RNA, ribonucleic acid. RNA functions as a messenger molecule, meaning that it copies the genetic instructions from the DNA before transferring the information to the relevant ribosomes. This sounds incredibly complex, but the key takeaway from this is that the sugars found serve a biological purpose, fueling the theory that important elements that help to form life could come from inside these meteorites and asteroids. This is not the first time that important building blocks that help to form life have been seen within meteorites. Hence the theory already having a good amount of weight behind it. Before this 2019 study, researchers had already found amino acids which form proteins and nucleobases which form DNA and RNA. Yoshihiro Furukawa, a researcher at Tohoku University in Japan and the lead author of the study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, explained that the sugars had been a big piece of the puzzle that was missing, limiting how convincing this theory was in the past. When commenting on the significance of this finding, he said, "The research provides the first direct evidence of ribose in space and the delivery of the sugar to Earth. The extraterrestrial sugar might have contributed to the formation of RNA on the prebiotic Earth, which possibly led to the origin of life." In terms of conducting this research, it's an impressive achievement that a fragile molecule could even still be detected and found within ancient materials. Now this knowledge can be applied as further samples undergo their analysis. A much less thrilling explanation is that these compounds arrived in the meteorites after their arrival on Earth. It goes without saying that there is plenty of life here on Earth. So there is the possibility that these meteorites became contaminated with terrestrial compounds after their arrival. The next steps here are to analyze a greater number of meteorites to try and observe the extraterrestrial sugars and gauge their abundance. This work is far from completion, though the prospect that the necessary components for life came to Earth from elsewhere does leave the possibility that those same building blocks arrived on other planets as well. Core of massive dying galaxies already formed 1.5 billion years after the Big Bang. Galaxies can be considered alive, dead, or quenching. Alive galaxies possess current star formation activity indicating that stars are still being created. Dead galaxies, on the other hand, possess no star formation activity. Quenching galaxies exist somewhere in the middle, but they do not have very much star formation going on. Researchers determine the life level of galaxies by using the spectrum of brightness. Recently, a team of researchers in the Cosmic Dawn Center at the National Observatory of Japan and the Niels Bohr Institute found a distant faded galaxy that seems to have ended life 1.5 billion years ago, 1 billion years earlier than previous studies and measurements indicated. This massive galaxy houses more than 1 trillion stars and is the most distant of its kind to be discovered. However, the research team found that the core of the galaxy seemed to be fully formed only 1.5 billion years after the Big Bang. Masayuki Tanaka, a co-author of the paper and an associate professor of astronomical science at the Graduate University for Advanced Studies and Japan's National Astronomical Observatory, said, "The previous measurement of this kind was made when the universe was 2.5 billion years old. We pushed the record up to 1.5 billion years and found, to our surprise, that the core was already pretty mature. The goal here is to understand why and how galaxies fade away." Francesco Valentino, a co-author of the paper and an assistant professor at Copenhagen's Cosmic Dawn Center, said, "The suppressed star formation tells you that a galaxy is dying. But that is exactly the kind of galaxy we want to study in detail to understand why quenching occurs." Astronomers postulate that massive galaxies like the one in the study are historically the first to die. Scientists further assert that studying these galaxies will tell us why quenching occurs. Understanding how galaxies form, flourish, quench, and eventually die is crucial to obtaining a fuller picture of how our universe works. Hopefully, as scientists and astrophysicists continue to research these galaxies, we will learn what truly makes them tick. Astronomers discover a trio of quasars. Although there are many aspects of space that are difficult to wrap the mind around, there are some things that are simply mind-boggling, among them quasars. These celestial bodies, which are extremely mysterious, appear to be unbelievably massive and remote objects that emit almost unprecedented amounts of energy and appear similar to stars when viewed through telescopes. As they differ from stars in nearly all but appearance and are powered by the enigmatic energy of black holes that lie at the hearts of galaxies. Their energy is so profoundly massive that one single quasar could shine 1,000 times brighter than 100 billion stars, all the while from a body that takes up a smaller volume than our solar system. And even more shocking than viewing one quasar is the fact that scientists have located three that had never been considered possible before. George Jurgowski with Caltech and leader of the discovering team spoke of just how rare such a discovery like this is, saying that quasars are extremely rare objects. To find two of them so close together is very unlikely if they were randomly distributed in space. To find three is unprecedented. Because it's believed that quasars are generated when gas falls into supermassive black holes, it's very likely that one cause of quasar formation could be the collision or merging of galaxies. If this is the case, it would help to explain how three such rare objects could have appeared so close to each other. This would make the quasars an even more interesting point of study, as it would mean that they represent the interactions of three galaxies in conjunction with at least one black hole. Although scientists now understand that there is a fundamental relationship between galaxy formation and nearby supermassive black holes, including within our own Milky Way, the particulars of this relationship have been much less forthcoming due to the difficulty inherent in studying black holes. Finding such an unbelievably rare trio of quasars, likely indicating the collision of galaxies during a time in the solar system when galaxy formation was rampant, has a large amount of potential for helping scientists understand this relationship better. Continued study of these quasars will hopefully help to advance our understanding of how we came to be here in the Milky Way in the first place. Astronomers describe a rare black widow star system. A new study describes a unique astronomical object called the Black Widow pulsar. The star system, named J06102100, is about 10,000 light-years from Earth. It was discovered in 2003 after scientists noticed periodic pulsing in the area. Scientists decided the system was a pulsar. A pulsar is a collapsed, highly magnetized star that rotates very quickly. They shoot out electromagnetic blasts out of their poles. So if their pole is facing the Earth, we can see the light in space, but it quickly goes away as the star spins. For example, J06102100 flickers every 3.8 milliseconds as it turns around. The object was named after the black widow spider that famously eats other spiders of a smaller size. The Black Widow pulsar is made up of two stars, one larger and one smaller. The larger of the two is slowly devouring the smaller star by pulling most of the surrounding matter into space. In addition to removing any matter from its vicinity, the larger star hits the smaller star with consistent energy discharges. On J06102100, these pulses have been happening over the last 100 or even thousands of years. These hits of energy push much of the remaining star matter into space. Since the star could devour its smaller counterpart at some point, scientists want to study this system before it goes away. Emma van der Wateren, a doctorate student at the Netherlands Institute for Radio Astronomy, studied the Black Widow pulsar for years and analyzed 16 years of data from a radio telescope to discover more about the pulsar. She and her team found some unique and interesting things about this specific star system. First, this system has never shown any changes in timing. It was consistent and steady throughout the past 16 years. Typically, Black Widow pulsars are irregular and temperamental, which is why this finding is so important to astronomers. Second, the star system does not have a radio eclipse, which is found in most other Black Widow pulsars. A radio eclipse happens when radio emissions stop during a specific part of the star's orbit path around each other. Van der Wateren explains this occurs when the companion star moves close to the front of the pulsar and all this irradiated material coming off of the companion eclipses the pulse emission from the pulsar. While the radio eclipse is still stumping scientists, the steady timing has a clear and helpful purpose. Van der Wateren says to detect gravitational waves you need many very stable pulsars. And unlike earlier Black Widow pulsars that have been discovered, this system is very stable. Scientists believe that if they analyze the consistent energy pulses of the larger star, they might be able to detect gravitational waves, which are uncommon ripples in the fabric of space-time. Gravitational waves theorized by Albert Einstein appear when massive universal objects collide. The waves from the collision move through space and time at light speed and warp the fabric of the universe as they rippled past. Massive gravity bulge was spotted on Venus. We often spot strange and unusual items or objects in space. One that has piqued a great deal of interest is a bulge spotted on Venus in 2016. This bulge took a slight curved shape not dissimilar to that of a bow. It was spied in the December of 2016 by Japan's Akatsuki probe, though similar objects were also seen through Europe's Venus Express spacecraft. This unknown structure spanned a staggering 10,000 kilometers and reached 65 kilometers above the surface of the planet. This discovery left plenty of questions and unknowns, though a study published in the journal Nature Geoscience presents a possible explanation that just may have cracked the case. The Akatsuki team have suggested that the bulge may be evidence of a gravity wave, something that is distinct from gravitational waves. Gravity waves are the result of a fluid material that is anything that is not in a solid state of matter reaching an equilibrium. Supporting this notion is that the bulge has stood through sulfuric winds on the surface of Venus, which would only be manageable for a massive force. Researchers have suggested that the combination of the mountains on Venus and the mighty winds are what may have formed this gravity wave. One thing that is a little more unusual with this explanation is that we have never expected gravity waves to exist on a scale quite this large. Could this be a wrong explanation, or could this scientific phenomenon occur in ways bigger than we ever thought possible? Scientists discover black hole has 3 hot meals a day. We all know we are meant to eat 3 balanced meals a day to stay healthy. Now NASA have applied this same analogy to a supermassive black hole in a galaxy light years away from our own. Astronomers found X-ray bursts coming from the center of the galaxy G-SEN 069 every 9 hours or so. This data was collected through NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory and the European Space Agency's XMM Neutron, all of which suggests that there is a supermassive black hole out there taking in a huge amount of material on a somewhat regular schedule, almost like eating hearty meals at regular times in the day. Before now, scientists had observed stellar mass black holes having regular outbursts, but this has never been seen from a supermassive black hole before, making this discovery very exciting. Researchers have estimated that the black hole, which contains 400,000 times the mass of the Sun, has been consuming the equivalent of 4 moons 3 times a day. This is a tremendously huge amount of material to be taken in. Giovanni Minowiti from the European Space Agency's Center for Astrobiology in Spain, the first author of the study, explained the significance of this huge consumption rate, stating, "This behavior is so unprecedented we had to coin a new expression to describe it: X-ray quasi-periodic eruptions." This is an exciting discovery that is being explored further through further X-ray observations, tracking the regularity of bursts and looking at new theoretical models. As further developments are made, we can hope to get closer to an explanation as to why this precisely is happening. These discoveries will help our understanding as much as we anticipate they will at the moment. The scientific world is always advancing, and sometimes that means needing to backtrack our understanding a little from time to time.